The following podcast is brought to you by CDKOffers.com. Use offer code BrokenSilicon for 25% off Windows codes and DieShrink for 3% off all other codes. And then it is also brought to you by thehenma.com. Use Moore's Law for 10% off your first order of coffee. All right, let's get to the show. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and today I will let my esteemed guest introduce himself.
How you going? My name is Anthony Garreffa, and I'm the senior news editor and many hat-wearing kind of guy at TweakTown. I write news for the website, GPUs, review graphics cards and displays, and general geek, really, as I'm sure you are and everyone else that's listening.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually just started doing this, I guess what you would consider fully full-time as my full-time job. And as I was leaving my company, I had done a pretty good job of not letting them know I had been doing this on the side for a year. And so when they finally asked the last week I was leaving, I was like, well, so the podcast is Broken Silicon, and a couple of them, it's an automotive company. They just started looking into it and they're like, yeah, I had no idea what you guys were talking about half the time.
Yeah. Wow. So how long have you been doing this now?
I guess I've been doing it. Well, so technically I made the YouTube channel mid 2018. Didn't do anything for like 4 months with it. I was too nervous. And then I made a MX150 overclocking video that was the most dreadful thing you could have ever watched. It's never been public. I've actually released clips of it at the end of 2019 just to give everyone an idea of how bad it was. And then my first video is just basically me talking into a phone at the end of 2018. I mean, if you really ask me, the channel basically started May 2019, I guess. So like a little over a year ago, I think.
So yeah, that's an exciting time then, especially now with everything that's going on. You're kind of like in the lull of like graphics card releases before everything completely blows up in the next couple of months.
Well, that's the thing. Compared to the normal stuff I cover, it's blowing up to it's blowing up so much right now that it's so funny. Late 2019, I could cover basically everything, and I had more than enough time to, any APU leak about any little thing from AMD, anything from Intel that's even 2 years out, any Nvidia graphics or AMD graphics card. And now I'm just starting to have to pick and choose. I was talking to my co-host every other episode, just so you know, is like a news recap of the prior 2 weeks with my brother. And we were talking about how we would have covered twice as much of the stories coming out right now a year ago. It's just we don't have the time to anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know if you feel the same.
Oh no, I write about 8 to 10 news stories a day, like 5-6 days a week. So most of them, I'm seeing that more and more of that percentage is being filled by all the stuff that's coming out. We're leading right up into next gen consoles. That was always going to be this huge, springboard to new graphics cards on PC anyway. And it's just the last 6 to 12 months have been pretty crazy. But I don't think we've seen anything yet. I think the fun is just beginning. I think that the fun is just about to start.
Yeah, unfortunately for my sleep, I agree. I think that it's only going to ramp up more and more. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if you can read it behind me, but I've had these plans to do a video about why it's taken so long to get HBM on most of AMD's, or not even most, but more, shall we say, of AMD's APUs, and the rollout of how PC games will kind of support the same types of SSDs the consoles will have. A look at R&D and how that affects development of new stuff, where I think I talked, John Petty and Mike Ruzzoni, I talked to about that. And that was 2 months ago. I plan to get those videos done because there's just another Intel or AMD leak coming out every other day now. And it's I assume I'll get to some of those folders full of information this year. I'm not actually that sure anymore.
Sounds like you need to clone yourself. So it sounds like it's the only way out.
Well, and you know that for everyone listening, we're actually recording on the 13th in America. In Australia, it is the 14th right now, which as usual completely threw me off, or almost did this time. And I think we were supposed to start like literally 2 hours ago. And I just let you know, it's like, well, I was finishing up a mostly Ampere video when I received RDNA 2 info and then more Ampere info. And I guess as long as you're good with it, we'll start hopefully in a couple hours.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. And I actually, after watching your video, I actually think it's good that there was that delay, because that's exciting stuff that we can now talk about. And that's what makes my heart sing is all this competition that's about to start. So RDNA 2 being as good as it seems to be that's worth the delay, right?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. I think I named my video "Sell Your 2080 Ti Before RDNA 2 and Ampere Kill It" and September. Originally, the video was just going to be called "Before Ampere Kills It," but I added the RDNA 2 info I just received, and so as a general summary, I can do it pretty quickly because I just made it. I mean, I've looked through. And I'm still pretty sure of all of that early stuff I leaked about Ampere, that it's around 40 to 60% roughly. Like, I'm sure there's going to be edge cases where it's more or less better than Turing, that the ray tracing is going to be insane, that AMD is going to be close to that too. I mean, again, I keep coming back to, they were calling it RDNA 2 for the longest time. And all of a sudden they just start calling it Navi 2X. I mean, they would only do that if at least their goal is to double the 5700 XT's performance, in my opinion. And it sounds like all of that's coming true. And I wasn't aware of this. It sounds like you can still sell a used 2080 Ti for over $1,000. And if you can, I'm like, well, look, they just discontinued Turing. So it's coming out, guys, like in a couple months. And I think it's not a paper launch. I think it's really coming out. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's up to you. It's going to be worth half as much in 2 months. If you don't need $500, which, hey, plenty of people don't, then keep your card. But otherwise, just final warning, your card's going to lose a ton of value.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be very quick as well. And it's not like it's a couple of $100 either, right? If it was $100 or $200, yes, but sure. That's a monitor. That's a CPU. That's a motherboard. That's an
entire next gen console that you can get in addition to upgrading your PC.
Yeah, I think that we would have, I think the releases this time around are different to every other release in the history of technology because of
especially recently.
Especially recently because of all these COVID restrictions, right? We would have had company techs, we would have been able to talk to Nvidia reps and AMD reps and ARB board partners, and there'd be more communication, there'd be more leaks and stuff like that, where it seems to be like everything's just different this time around. I'm sure everyone can feel it. It's just different, where I think we would have heard more, maybe before, but now we're not really hearing much. And like you said on your videos, like now there's this next mining boom, but no one's mining. Like I had at one point like 60 graphics cards mining. I'm not mining with even one card anymore. I'm not even one. It's like, but there's this, mining boom like 2.0 that's going to come out. It's just
Yeah, I don't know that I would trust NVIDIA's opinions on mining. I'm pretty sure they're being sued about lying about mining. So I don't know if they've learned their lesson yet. And I think people should remember that. I mean, I still have a Vega 64 and an RX 560 taking up 2 of 6 slots on one rig right now. All of the others have been broken down. And I mean, energy here is 0.058 kilowatt hours where I live, which I looked that up and I was like, wait, that's almost as cheap as China. I better scale this up quick.
Have you looked at the electricity price in the state that I'm in?
Well, I know you're in Australia, so I know I don't want to look, but I mean, what is it?
I think it's about 45 cents a kilowatt hour, roughly.
Is that Australian dollars though?
Australian. So you're looking at maybe 30 something cents. It's still ridiculous. Whatever it is, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and so did you mine in 2017 then, though?
I did. I mined just before it started to get big, and not before it got big, but before it went, absolute ballistic, and graphics cards were selling out all over the planet. Right in the middle of that time. So it was a good time to begin. But yeah, and the Australian summer didn't do me well. So as soon as it got hot, having all those graphics cards in one room is you just can't keep it cool.
No, in Peoria, Illinois, I started mining just with a few. I mean, and I had mined in 2013. So then it started heating up again in 2017. And I just was like, let me look into this new Ethereum. It's not Litecoin anymore. So let me check out Ethereum. I started mining with that with my Fury Nitro. And I was like, look at that. It's making, I don't remember what it was, honestly, like a couple $100 a month. And I was like, well, wait a second, a couple $100 a month with one card? And then I started looking into the profitability, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't even matter how much energy I'm using here with how cheap it is. I just did the math on how many amps before my house shuts off, which I did test a couple times, and it did shut off a couple times. But yeah, there were some days where it was like 90 degrees in my house, and I know it's hotter where you are than where I am, a little bit. And it was it was rough. Yeah. Eventually, I remember in 2018 just being like, well, I'm selling some cards because I'm not living through another one of those summers again. I don't care, man. It was so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm right with you. It was, I couldn't do it. It was just unbearable. It was just too hot. I loved it because I was nerding out over that. I felt like I was going into a terminal. I felt like I was in a hacker movie. I was constantly on a keyboard somewhere, doing something somewhere for the mine. But then the heat was just, it's too much.
Oh, yeah. And it's addictive for people like us, where it's an excuse to buy more of the hardware we already like. And so then I bought a portable 4K monitor, and I'm walking around and plugging it into different mining rigs and checking the stats on them. And and it's just, I felt so cool. And your friends think you're the coolest guy in the world too. They walk in and they're like, what? You built these? But I mean, by the, I don't know, but I would say by early 2019, even actually, it was becoming very clear that unless your energy's as cheap as mine and you already have the rigs, you shouldn't be wasting your money. I had a friend who was mining in Texas because he followed my lead. And I'm like, wait, your energy is twice as much as me and you're in Texas. So how much are you spending on air conditioning down there this summer? And he did the math. He's like, oh, I got to stop.
Yeah. Yep. No, I was the same. I think mine was a little bit earlier, probably beginning of 2018, only because of summer here, right? You guys are heading into winter at that time of year. We're heading into summer. So it was the end of 2018 for me, probably maybe even October, November. I was like, no, the heat's getting too much. And then the profitability was just tanking. I'm like, no, I'm out. And then 2019 all happened. And
Well, let me ask you this, though, since we're on the subject. What do you say to the people in the comments that will undoubtedly be in these comments as well? And they put, I detest anyone who's ever mined ever or evil, and you're causing global warming. What do you say to those people?
It's right. OK, unless you had tens of millions of people doing it, the environmental impact, I get it. It's you've got people out there oh my God, you're burning the earth. But it's out of the amount of people that are doing it, the actual people with 20, 30, 40 cars is nothing. If you had a factory, you're in China, you've got, 300,000-400,000 cars, then absolutely, then I'm on your side. But no, it's like having a car, right? How many people have really hotted up cars with engines and you put the foot down, and it's the same. There's more of those people out there than the people that probably mine. So I do get it, but then, I don't know.
Well, let me point this out too to those people. You live in Adelaide, I believe.
Yes.
Do you know what the energy is that they use locally typically to power your power plants?
No. Well, we're the state that actually had Elon Musk come in, and we had the battery. That's where I live. So he did that in about an hour and a half north of me. But no, I think we're using. I think it's coal. We tried to move we've tried to move away from. We're a nuclear-free country as well, so we have nothing that can. It makes it a lot harder. So then, and China owns the entire grid over here. For a lot of people that don't know, they own the entire electrical grid to the whole nation.
You heard one of my arguments then, because I live in Illinois and it's all nuclear and wind power here. So I'm just letting people know I'm not there. And let that be a lesson to you too. Unless you're in China, I guess, or Venezuela, where it's just all coal or oil. Most places that have the massive mining rigs are hydroelectric, right? Yes. Most of them, because that is the cheapest energy, and you're only going to be mining if it's cheap energy. And so the reason I started mining so much is because I'm using renewables, guys. Now apparently you were killing the earth, so you're not actually helping my argument.
I'm a bad person, and I apologize. I'm not mining anymore, so hopefully I've evened that out.
Well, okay, so this kind of almost turned into an interview of me unintentionally in the beginning here, but let's let's get into it. I was not sure which bullet points, which things I wanted to talk about. You've been doing this for forever, so it was hard to decide where to start, but I got so many good reader mails that I figured let's just run with most of those and that'll kind of guide us. So I think I'm going to start with one here. And just a reminder to everyone listening, if you're a patron, you can submit reader mails to our guests. Justin Parrish writes in and goes, what was Anthony's most frustrating game to review? Now, I got to actually cut in here. There were some people that got the impression you reviewed games. I assume maybe you have, but I don't know.
I think I've reviewed a game here and there, but not much. I handle the graphics cards and news, but not many games. I play a lot of games.
Yeah, man, me too. But I guess so. Let me just change the question to this then. What's the most frustrating review you've done?
Frustrating review. I think all reviews are frustrating, obviously, because they especially launch reviews. Like late drivers and samples can sometimes come in late, especially for me in Australia. Maybe one of the most frustrating of recent ones, maybe the 5600 XT, because I love that card so much. But it was the last minute complete mess. Like, I don't know if I can swear, because in Australia we like to swear a lot, but it was just a complete mess. And
you can swear on this channel. I mean, I'd recommend not doing it crazily, but I every now and then someone in the comments is like, why did you swear? And it's like, because this is for adults, guys. You can swear if you want.
Good. Well, then the 5600 launch was a clusterfuck. It was just a mess. That's probably the most recent one, but most frustrating, I don't know. You know what? A lot of people will say that, but then I'm not someone who like completely lives in a positive world, but like I love my job so much that frustration is part of it. If it was just easy and there wasn't frustration, I don't know. Maybe Vega would probably be the most frustrating. If I had to name one, Vega was just. Was
that because of the drivers? Because again, I remember that was the era where the launch drivers, the overclocking just didn't work, and then people would attack you in the comments for not overclocking properly, even though AMD themselves didn't give you working drivers to overclock.
Yeah, it was just. I think that was probably the most frustration. I think Nvidia's had a pretty good run for probably since Fermi. Like, I think they've had a pretty good run. Review wise, it hasn't been hard. But
there's this indecisiveness that I think, like you saw with the 5600 XT, where it's like, look, AMD, you've just got to like decide what's going on, man. Because like the 5600 XT, they're like, oh, we're going to make it a 2060 competitor, to the point that it will literally be a 2060 using the same energy, being the same performance. Yeah. 2060 Super gets announced. Never mind. We're just going to make it as strong as a 5700 XT. And it's like, why? Just do it from the beginning then. Like not sure of what their launch price should be. It's just, I think we're going to see more and more confidence from them moving forward. Yes. But yeah, especially I think just around RDNA 1, they seem so indecisive.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I don't know if that's a pardon me. I don't know if that's a maybe obviously the marketing team from RTG going into Navi, and it wasn't structured enough, and then they'll move on like from here on out. Because obviously the CPU team's going from stride to stride. Maybe it was just part of that. There wasn't enough communication, or maybe it was just like what was the word? The debating that they did. I just we debated them. Maybe it was all part of some really shitty like guerrilla marketing campaign where I think about it from a marketing perspective, right? They caused so much headlines and so much talk around it, but at the end of the day, it was still a kick-ass card. There was a lot of free advertising. Yeah. They got like, oh, last minute we changed the memory. Who cares? The card kicked ass in the end. Did you have to do a BIOS upgrade? Yes. The people that and I wrote this in my reviews, the people I felt the most bad for were the ARBs. Mm-hmm. Imagine being the ARBs. You've got a card shipping with 12 gigabit and it's 14 gigabit. Like, really? Like, it was that last minute for AMD? Or was it a marketing stunt? We're never going to know.
Well, I think that one was a last minute decision. I do think there's a chance they legitimately, quote unquote, debated with the 5700 XT launch. I do think maybe that one was somewhat intentional, but it's hard for me to say because like I almost feel like I'm biased if I like agree with AMD that this was planned the whole time. Just like I don't think the Super series was planned the whole time. I think that Nvidia caught wind of what's going on with RDNA 1, and they were surprised AMD actually had caught up.
Yep. No, I agree. Super was very, very weird launch. That was a weird launch. I remember being at E3. No, I was in the States. I was in the States for E3, and then Nvidia's like, "Do you want to come to an event tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Okay." And then went to the event, and there's like 2 or 3 people from all the press and all the YouTubers that I know. And I'm like, what is this event like? It has to be something small. Like, I'm just in the States and just invited me to, something maybe cyberpunk related. At that time, we didn't know about cyberpunk and Nvidia and all that kind of stuff. And then it was like, oh, yeah, it's a super launch. Well, I'm like, what the hell? Like, you've just got just a bunch of people in a small little, like, bar, I think it was. It was like maybe less than 50 people, and it was a super launch. I'm like, but I'm thinking no press is here. It was just odd. It was a very odd launch. That was very last minute as well.
Yeah, I think AMD's got them scrambling a bit right now. I actually pointed that out in my last video that my first possibly credible RDNA 2 leak in a year might literally be coming from someone in Nvidia.
Yes.
Which is just okay. I don't know why all of a sudden AMD can control leaks so well and Nvidia can't, but I just find that bizarre, which it's like, I just have to admit, it's like, well, this is one of my sources who's been right so far on everything. So, okay, I guess Nvidia is going to leak RDNA 2 before someone in AMD is.
It's weird. You would not think that, but this happens. This is big business. These cards are gonna be worth billions of dollars of sales. Across many years. These leaks are going to happen. But again, would this have happened this way if there were no COVID restrictions and there were trade shows and everything? Like maybe this information would have gone out a lot quicker, a lot more. That's
true, actually. Yeah, if there's more people walking around talking to each other. Like I got some decent information when I went to Hot Chips last year, and of course they're doing it again, but it's virtual only in a month. And I'm like, well, I attend. It's like, I mean, I'll probably, watch the live streams and maybe I'll pay for that. But to be honest, it's just so much less exciting than when I actually got to go there and meet Raja Kaduri and Jim Keller and talk to people over drinks, people who were starting to tell me things that they may have not have over drinks. And now there's none of that, right?
Yeah. Well, that's how I've gotten a lot of my leaks over the years. And now, that's done. No more of those leaks, because no one's going to talk about this kind of stuff over Messenger, or an email. They can all be traced back. But a couple of drinks, you're talking to one person, talk to another person. It happens eventually. You'll network enough to get to that position. But now that's what are the future of GPU leaks? Is this the future of GPU leaks? Where like you said, Nvidia is leaking out details of RDNA 2. Is that the future of leaks, where it's the competitor talking about the competitor? It's odd. It's not. I don't like it.
Well, and I mean, I guess, two things, but I want to kind of change to another subject. But I honestly just think it has to mean one thing: either AMD has nothing, and that's why there's no leaks, or it's so good that everyone working on it knows it and they're not talking because they know they have a chance here to finally come back to where they were with the 7970 launch.
Yes. And also to add on to that I believe that they have something that's actually kick-ass, and I heard that.
I think that's much more likely. Yeah,
that's definitely. I think that we both agree on that. But then also remember that the marketing team that was with AMD is now completely gone. They don't have any of that team. The previous team, there were lots of leaks for every generation before that. That team went to Intel, and now that marketing team no longer works at Intel. Right? They don't work at Intel now. So a lot of that leaky train, kind of thing that AMD had going for it is gone. And maybe that was a thing for Lisa Su as well. Like maybe she came in and said, I want no leaks with RDNA until it's time. Let Zen sing its praises, because everything Zen is positive, pretty much positive. Where now maybe we're seeing the first little like seedlings coming out for RDNA 2 marketing.
Well, and again, and it's not just NVIDIA. Most of the info I'm getting about RDNA 2 and later versions of RDNA actually is coming from people who work at Sony and Microsoft, because they have to know what's in it. I mean, they help design some of the future RDNA architectures. And even then, it's like, I put this in one of my videos. I was invited to like an online press briefing, and I actually got one of my questions asked recently on there to a marketing person. And it was hilarious because I kind of tried to stealthily ask if anything from RDNA 3 is in the consoles. And I forgot exactly how I asked it. It was something about a geometry engine, and just like there's a lot of information out there of this and this and this. What makes AMD's partners decide what level of RDNA they call a generation they're utilizing? And right before the host asked the question to the engineering person at AMD, you could hear him like, "Oh no," like try to cut her off from asking the question. And he was just basically like, no comment.
Yeah. Those I've heard really the agreements between Sony and Microsoft and AMD for those semi-custom designs are like, I think that they're probably more important than AMD's own internal stuff. Sony and Microsoft have that stuff locked down.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and one thing I actually heard, I mean, to get into a little bit of Palace intrigue, is that how closely they've been working with them lately. Like there was some people at Sony, and again, they're probably biased because they like their own stuff. But, they were just talking about how sometimes they feel like they can organize an architecture better than Radeon can. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that's the problem, right? And I think that maybe that's why we're seeing out of nowhere that AMD's having some success with their GPU, right? Because they sold off a lot of the all the Adreno IP and stuff like that years ago, and they've just been bleeding out with Radeon since. They've just been bleeding out, and NVIDIA's been holding back this entire time. And now maybe with the Sony collaboration, like you're saying, Sony can sometimes come in and go, well, we can design a GPU better than the Radeon team. So maybe they've had that. It's like a Justice League. You've got to have multiple heroes. You can't just have one. Maybe they're slowly building this team up. Oh, we've got some brains from Sony that suggest ABC. But if we did this, and waited a few more years, and we can really hit the 7nm node, it's like everything's lined up for AMD perfectly. Yeah. And now they're just ready to strike. But one thing could have gone out. Like what happens? Just for example, if Sony and Microsoft said, "Fuck it, let's go with Nvidia for the next gen consoles," what would have happened to AMD? It wouldn't make that to survival from CPU sales alone.
Well, I mean, it would have been it's been essential to AMD to have all, shall we say, powerful consoles, relatively speaking, using their hardware, and how that's at least, and you've seen it, right? You've seen this thing where at the very least, while NVIDIA may have some advantages with their architectures in some PC games, developers can't just completely trash the optimizations for AMD anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, if AMD is not going to put in the effort to work with developers on PC as much as NVIDIA is, then I mean, at least they need to find some way to make sure they're not ignoring them.
Well, that's it. Well, and one would think that we are only going to be seeing more of that AMD win. I guess that's what you can talk about. It's just AMD's power of positive marketing and strategy right now, because you're going to see all games going forward are going to be developed for AMD CPUs and GPUs from scratch. Proper Zen 2 CPUs. You look at the architecture that's inside of the current gen consoles. It's so old. It's so old. What's the Jaguar architecture? Nearly 15 years old? Something like that.
Well, actually, it wasn't actually that old. I believe Jaguar actually came to the consoles before it came to PC, though. I actually think it did, or around the same time. And you saw this, too, with some of their IP, like the PS4 Pro had FP16, and frankly, some of the organizations similar to Vega, before Vega came out, you know, and many people argue that there was an RX, well, I guess there is an RX 590, but that there was an RX 490 that was a 384-bit version of Polaris that they basically shelved in favor of selling Vega yields to gamers. And that Microsoft was like, well, we'll use it if you want for the Xbox One X.
Yep. And it makes sense. But the next leap, like going forward, when you've got pretty much 16 threads of CPU performance inside of a console, all those crazy amounts of bandwidth, and then an actual kick-ass GPU, you know, how much optimization is AMD going to have in all of their stuff going forward? You know, PC gamers will win by default, but will having an AMD CPU and GPU be a benefit to an Nvidia GPU and Intel CPU in 3 years' time? You know,
the way I would answer, my opinion is, I think it's going to help with multi-threading no matter what, and that there's no way around it. Intel just needs to get back on track. So, and I think they might late next year. I mean, I do, but you know, the way they organize their architecture, I think it's going to, you know, keep up with IPC that AMD has. Not right away. I mean, I think AMD is about to blow them away, frankly, with Zen 3. But I think late next year, they'll catch back up a little bit. It's just the problem with Intel is how much it costs them to make equivalent stuff. But either way, you know, if you have more threads, I think AMD having 16 threads in a console is going to help you. I think the bigger question I have is how much of Intel's gaming performance right now, their advantage over AMD, I would say not really an advantage anymore, but their competitiveness is based on the fact that all PC games have been built around Sandy Bridge for the past 6-7 years. That's what I'm curious about when we have like Assassin's Creed Valhalla come out, and especially games early next year. Are we going to see Skylake not aging so well? Like, because I don't think it's going to, frankly.
Yeah, and that's or at least not scaling well when you crank everything to ultra as well. Like, that's the other problem, is that game developers want to make games to the lowest common denominator. They want to make it so it's available to everyone. Unlike, you know, Crysis back in the day, where you needed to spend $5,000, $10,000 on a new rig to crank it up to ultra. There's nothing that there's nothing that pushes PC anymore. And next gen consoles might do that. Ray tracing in games might do that, sure, but like, there's nothing that's going to maybe push an entire generation of CPUs out. But then I want that. I'm sure you want that. I would love that. I would love to play a game where it's like minimum requirements, 16 threads, minimum requirements, 64 gig of RAM, minimum requirements, you know, dual graphics cards, you know. I would love that, but it's just, there's nothing anymore.
Well, and it also kind of depends on what you classify as minimum requirements. Like, I remember, and I think I wrote this down somewhere in the notes, like the days of cranking up settings in Crysis, and I think my average on my PC was actually 25 frames per second. But I thought running it above 720p with like high to ultra settings just looked so good, I was willing to put up with the low frame rate. This hasn't really been true for almost any game anymore. And you know, some of that's maybe because they're more optimized, but some of that's maybe the visual difference you get going from low to ultra is just so much smaller than it used to be. So when you say minimum requirements, I think people need to accept that there might just be some games that run 4K or, you know, whatever, 1800p on the consoles at around 60 frames. In the minimum requirements for PC, it might actually drop to 40 frames more often than the consoles if you don't have eight cores.
Yeah. And I think that's an issue, right? Like, why don't we see better graphics when we crank up the resolution? You know, it's like you can have the game rendering at 4K. The game is rendering at 4K. But that doesn't mean that the textures are high resolution. That doesn't mean that the textures are 4K. They're not going to, jump up in quality. So you look at consoles that are coming now. Now in 2020, now in 2020, they're like, oh my God, 4K, 60 FPS, it's a thing. But we're not hearing anything about detail level of the graphics. So sure, they can render at 4K. It's probably rendering at 1440p and upscaling to 4K most of the time. I'm sure it's not going to be rendering in native 4K. Are they going to come out and say, we are rendering in native 4K? Or is it just going to be like, in 4K, we don't actually know anymore. And also, ultra graphics are very different to like medium and high graphics. So are we going to be seeing, is that what we're going to see? We're going to see Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 at medium to high graphics at 60 FPS, while you'll need a new RDNA 2
and is Ultra going to be something that melts a 3080 Ti too? Yes, that's the other question. If medium
that's what I want. That's what I want. That's the kind of the kind of leap that I'm hoping that we get out of consoles. So we get that to medium high, but then PC will just be on Ultra and just be like way above.
Yeah, I mean, but like I've heard Assassin's Creed Valhalla's 4K, real 4K. Unfortunately, it sounds like they're targeting 30 frames, at least on the Series X, which so you assume same for PS5. And it's like, well, okay, I wish you just turned down some settings so it's 60. Having said that, well, I mean, based on past Assassin's Creed, maybe you'll just run 30 FPS on a PC anyway. So what do I know?
That's it.
But I know Horizon Forbidden West, at least I thought I read correctly, I haven't checked just now, is targeting real 4K. But I know that I do think so. I don't think the assets thing is going to be an issue. I think they're going to saturate 4K. At least that's everything I've been told. And that's something I'm excited for. Although I will say, I think the idea of like full 4K, I think we're still going to see a lot of games kind of target dynamic resolution that kind of goes in between 1600p and 4K. Yes. And that you're going to see a lot of fanboys argue over it, of course. But at the end of the day, people are kind of going to stop caring. I mean, I just got a 4K monitor, and I mean, the difference, it depends on the game, to be honest. But some games, depending on how good the scaling is inside of it, it doesn't look much worse at like 1800p.
No. And so I don't know if you've looked into a lot of what I write about on TweakTown, but like I'm 37. I have been an enthusiast my entire life, from like early 3DFX days, but even before that, right through till now. And I've always wanted to run at 60 FPS and beyond. So 60 FPS is kind of like, that's my minimum. I pretty much won't touch it. The only game that I've played that wasn't 60 FPS was Zelda Breath of the Wild on Nintendo Switch. I bought a Switch just for that one game. I didn't care.
Was it okay?
It was okay. If I played it in portable mode, it was good. The frame rate was a lot higher than putting it in docked mode. Then the resolution would go up, but then the frame rate would tank.
Oh,
and sometimes drop to like 15, 20 FPS. And I'm like, well, I'm not playing at that. Like that's disgusting. So I went to portable mode, and you stay close to what feels like 30 FPS average. Obviously, you can't tell, but it's good. But no, I've been gaming on high resolution displays. I've probably spent over $100,000 on monitors in the last 15, 16 years. I have legitimately spent computers in my cars and my partying and everything. So it all goes into this stuff, right? So I'm sitting in front of a 43-inch 4K 144 hertz display now, and a Zeus, a good Zeus ROG big monitor, and even playing the latest games on that. I've got a Titan RTX in my machine. So the one up above from 2080 Ti, and I still can't hit 4K 120 in virtually any game on a single card. So I'm looking it down to 1440p, and letting the game itself, like be it Call of Duty Warzone, or I play a lot of Apex Legends and stuff like that, and it upscales and looks great. So even that's for me. That's for me going. I'm a big fanboy of that stuff. I will see that difference between 1440p and 4K, but it's getting that good now that if you're, I don't know, for me, I personally find if you're running around at like 120 frames a second, you're moving around in that environment fast, you're not going to stop and go, oh, look, the corner of that building is not in 4K. It needs to be in 4K, like, because it's running so smooth for one that it's like you don't see it as much. Where if you were playing like a slower adventure game, I think that's when you crank up to 4K and you'd want to hit that 60 FPS minimum, and you'd probably notice that slight resolution increase. But for most action games, anything that moves fast, I don't think you'll tell the difference between 1440p and 4K on a 4K display now. Where years ago, it felt like if you played any game in a low resolution, like if you had a 1600 by 1200 monitor back in the day and played at 1280 by 1024, it looked like crap. You were just like, no, that's it.
Well, and I think engines were not as good at scaling resolutions down slightly in the engine. I think a lot of games would just turn into instant blocking mode if you went below native res.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting you say that, actually, because, I'm going to get into, I'll bring up a reader mail because we're literally talking about this. Dragon Eddie writes in, and first of all, just a PSA to Dragon Eddie, you gotta Yeah, calm down a little bit. You sent me like a reader mail that was a wall of text and it was 7 questions in one long sentence. So just try to, just tone it down to 2. But I really liked your question, so I used a few of them. And here's the first one. In your opinion, 4K gaming possible in the short term or in long term? And is it interesting for taking into account that visuals and FPS are honestly the equally important, which I think you touched on. But I bring this up because I actually have been saying recently, I don't think 4K is hard to run. That's my opinion. No. It probably depends on the games we play. But like I play Battlefield 5, that's not an easy to run game. And with the Radeon 7, I mean, I think I just have it at mostly ultra settings. I think I could turn 2 of them down to medium, and then a couple of them to high. And I think resolution scales at like 90%, and I'm getting 120 hertz. And then Metro Exodus, not an easy game to run. I'm running it at like 1800p, above 100 hertz at all times, at like, I think high settings. I don't think it's critically impossible to run games above 100 hertz in 4K. It's just a couple settings you turn down.
Yes, but I'm hoping that is now, and that the next wave of games, 4K will be more important because the consoles are actually running it in 4K now, right? Now you're pretty much just getting a mid-range kind of game and running it at 4K. When we're going to have all these new textures and these bigger worlds, like all these new games that are coming out in next-gen consoles, I think 4K will be maybe a little bit harder to run. Like where now, it's like even like Battlefield 5, look at the work that EA did with Frostbite. They did phenomenal work. They put a lot of work into that engine. But like years ago, you couldn't run a Frostbite game at 4K, because it wasn't optimized. But now it's the games are so optimized now. 4K it's not that hard. Everyone thinks that to get a 4K gaming PC, I'm going to need to spend at least $5,000. It's like, no, you don't need to run everything on ultra. And then you see people online all the time like, my PC sucks. I can't run 4K at 60 FPS. And then they've got like 8 times anti-aliasing enabled.
Yes,
like, you're running 4K. Why are you running anti-aliasing when you're running 4K? Disable anti-aliasing and your performance skyrockets.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say when it comes to frame rate, again, kind of just touching on what I said before, I think I'm going to be honest. It depends. There are some games I played on console where if it's a locked 30 hertz with good motion blur, it's actually not that bad. In a shooter or an adventure game where you're jumping around a lot, I mean, I would just beg, like, please turn down some settings, whatever you need to do to get it to 60 hertz if you can. Yes. But like when I play Death Stranding, all of the backgrounds are like solid backgrounds and there's not that many show characters on screen. It didn't look bad at all. Like I honestly almost thought it was 60 hertz because of how smooth the motion blur was and how steady the frame pacing was. And same goes with like Horizon or The Last of Us or something like that. But then there are some games on console where it's just a mess. And I guess I'm repeating myself, but I just hope they can get it through their head that it's worth it to turn down the resolution 20% if it means you crank up the frame rate to a steady 60. And there's really no excuse anymore.
I think that's what we're going to see now. I think that, Microsoft and Sony get to finally say that their consoles are going to be able to do, the coveted 4K resolution. But 60 FPS is more important. Give me 60 FPS flat, minimum 60 FPS. So it's guaranteed.
That's my worry, though, is that they will market it as 4K, and so they'll feel forced to lock it at 4K so they can market it. That's my. But then
I don't like that, and I think that they're going to try and do this whole like we can do 120 FPS as well. Like, okay, 120 FPS is cool, but like not when I'm touching thumbsticks. Like I don't care.
Not in all games. It's not necessary.
That's it. Where if you're playing like a platform or something like that and you're moving fast, like a driving game, I think 120 FPS is going to be phenomenal. You obviously get a new TV and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But for a first-person shooter, I can't see like Call of Duty or like PUBG or any of these shooters on a PC. You could blind test me between 30, 60, 90, 120, 160, 240, and I'll get it like 99 out of 100 times. But like on a console, are you really going to tell the difference between 60 and 120? Because you can't flick that fast with your thumb. But with a mouse, I can go like left to right on my desk, and I can be pulling a 180-degree shot. Where I can't do that on a console that fast because there's so much motion blur and all this other crap going on at the same time.
Well, you're actually going to think I'm a heretic, and I'm just not afraid to admit it. But I play Battlefield 5 on PC using a controller.
No way! Oh,
and I mop them up, top of the leaderboard each time. And
I feel like that was a silver bullet straight into my heart.
Well, here's the thing, though, too. There are some games where it just does not work. Like we were playing Far Cry New Dawn with a controller, and I'm like, I cannot hit anything. And it's because they have this this acceleration, when you're flicking, it starts moving faster. And then also the dead zone, they don't let you adjust it. And there's just this massive dead zone. So I'm like a artillery piece trying to aim with a submachine gun. And it's so there are some games where it doesn't work. But I mean, if you look at games actually, I'm trying to think of the ones like Halo, actually.
Yes.
And Battlefield, ever since Battlefield 1 especially, they have more options to customize the analog sticks movements than I've ever seen in my life. There's 20 different sliders. Oh, and Titanfall also lets you do that. Even on console, by the way, which I thought was interesting. And if you can adjust it enough, if you're used to it, I think you'd be surprised how accurate you can be. But there's just some games where it's impossible to aim. And if it's at 30 hertz, well, that hurts you too.
Yeah, 30. I can't. I don't know. I'm too much my little finger up in the air, holding my little cup of tea. I can't do 30 FPS. I can't do it.
Archon971 writes in and he says, do you see most gaming formats continuing to be around 16:9 monitors, or do you expect that, for example, VR or other monitor ratios will become more standard?
I think that is a fantastic question because it's something that I want. So just to preface that, I played Half-Life Alyx on day one. Massive Half-Life fan. I played Half-Life Alyx on day one. It was one of probably the top 5 gaming experiences of my entire life. I was screaming and crying at the end. It was just an amazing journey. 15 years I've been waiting for that game. But will that be the future? No, I don't think VR in the home is the future. And I think a lot of that early marketing was just until it gets to $200, $300 for a headset, and then it's not going to be good. I just can't see that right now. But what I would love to see are 21:9 TVs. And I want to see ultra-wide TVs. Ultra-wide on PC is awesome. And I think that with the consoles having ultra-wide support, there's going to be no problems for them to do that. The games have the support. It's an AMD GPU. We know that there's 21:9 support. I think that maybe not straight away it won't be 21:9 TVs will dominate, 20% of the market in 5 years. But 120 hertz TVs weren't a thing, even 2-3 years ago.
Now they're a thing. All 120.
It's holy shit, 120 proper 4K 120 hertz on a TV. That's amazing. But to have I'd love to have a weird 57 or 63 or whatever inch, ultra wide TV. That would look fantastic, especially for movies. A lot of movies, they have the black bars because of the aspect ratio. I'd love to have 1-to-1. That would be awesome. So I think there's something like that. I think we'll see that. Look at the Samsung Odyssey G9, the new one that's just come out. 5120 by, 1440, 240 hertz, 49-inch super ultra wide. That's insane. I think that's a bit too insane, 32:9. But no, 21:9 TVs would be cool. I think 21:9 TVs would be really cool to see.
I think Xbox said they are going to support 21:9 if they haven't already.
I think one of them has already said that they support it or they will support it. So I can see that. I think you can plug it into a FreeSync ultra-wide monitor, I think. But I would love to see them just go look, there's going to be 21:9 options in maybe only next-gen consoles if you plug in an ultra-wide PC monitor. And then in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, we'll have 21:9 TVs, and that will also work over HDMI. That'd be cool.
That was always an annoying thing for me too, is when I was looking at 21:9s or when people were asking me for advice, I'd be like, well, the problem is if you game on both console and PC, a lot of, at least they used to, consoles would just force it to run in a 1080p, and then you'd have to zoom in. It wouldn't even accept in between resolution, which is really ridiculous. I mean, if you built the game to run in 4K on a console, for example, if something's, stretched 1440p, I don't remember, 3200 by 1440 or whatever, right? That's below 4K. So just render the game in that and set the frame rate target to whatever it was for 4K so they can use their 21:9 monitor. It really shouldn't be that hard. There's a lot of things in games, though, that I shouldn't be that hard to support. that seems real hard for some devs.
Yeah, some of the developers, I don't know. I don't get it. It's just, I think, what was it like Ubisoft said a few years ago? Didn't they say 4K was irrelevant? I think
well, they can't run any of their games at 4K.
I actually think they said that. Yeah, it was something like that. It was just like, I think it was one of the Far Cry developers, like, no one plays in 4K, and then like now it's all here. You know, it's like there's a lot of questions I have for game developers. Like, do they even test their games on the problems that you're having? How are you as a customer or a gamer having those issues? Like, it just seems like something that is so easy to not have happen.
Well, and I'm sure it's not easy. I'm sure it requires a lot of work, but if you're going to put effort into some of the other stuff, I mean, or like keyboard and mouse support on a console. I was just playing Zombie Army 4, and it was like on sale on PlayStation, so I just got it on there to play with my friends on the couch. And I was screwing around in the settings, and it said mouse and keyboard calibration. I was like, what? And I just grabbed a mouse and a keyboard and plugged it into my PlayStation, and it worked. And I'm like, well, what the? Why can they do this? Why can't everyone do this? Every game should support both a controller and a mouse and keyboard. And let's be honest, any game they make on console, I'm sure it has mouse and keyboard support. It's just not in the menu because they had to program the game anyways.
That's exactly right. Yeah. They're not making the game on a controller. You know, they're not like
exactly so
the game on a controller. You know,
it's the INI files are probably there. It's just set to off on the console.
Yeah, and it's disappointing. That was something I really hoped we'd see this time around, like a full concentration on using a mouse and keyboard with the console. That would have been cool. Would have been really cool.
I think we will. I mean, I think Microsoft. I still am not ruling out that Microsoft is going to make that push where they're going to say, no. We're mandating mouse and keyboard, or at least we're going to try to make them put it in every game. And I'm still really hoping that they put at least some lockdown version of Windows on the Xbox Series. Well, I guess Xbox Series X and Series S, because I just think that'd be such a unique marketing feature to say, hey, you know, maybe you need to get apps from the Windows Store, but it's basically Windows RT. And any of those games on the Microsoft Store that are meant for PC, they run on your Xbox. You can use mouse and keyboard. You can use Word. You can use PowerPoint. You can use all this stuff. Yeah. And I don't know. I just think that I'm kind of changing the subject, but I think that would be such a fantastic marketing point for like people going to college and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Microsoft need to win this. They need to win this war. They won't. They will not want to lose this time. And just like AMD, I think that they're just going to come out with all guns blazing, and they're just going to go ballistic. And something that would make sense, right? You know, Sony have a lot of cool stuff, but if Microsoft could come out with you know, an Xbox that actually accepts mouse and keyboard and actually has Office apps and Skype, you know, things like that, like Word, you know, you can use it in your college and you can play, like you're saying, you can play games and, you know, do work and study. You know, you're going to get a lot more parents buying them as well. And that parent market where there's some big coin there as well. So I don't know. I think that would actually be really cool. It would take away, would Microsoft be like, we're making, would that actually be what everyone trolls with memes on? Would that be PC 2.0? If Microsoft released an Xbox that can actually have a mouse and keyboard and run software, is that PC 2.0? What happens to PC at that point?
Well, I mean, it just blows my mind. And I guess I have two things to say. Like, number one, it's a Microsoft device. You are the Windows company. What is wrong with you? Do you remember the days of during the 360 games for Windows where they basically just nuked PC gaming performance and started putting games on their console that lit on fire instead of putting it on PC? I was so aggravated as a PC gamer back then. And I'm just like, my God, can you just make PC gaming work? I mean, frankly, I think what scared them into shape is seeing SteamOS and going, oh man, if we ruin this, Steam will just make their own operating system and leave us in the dust. And so
But then look at what happened right after that, right? You look at Xbox 360 era, that's when Crysis, started to come out. And that's when everything started to change. That's when Valve had dominance. That's when they started to change internally. And that's probably when they started to go, screw this. We're actually going to make SteamOS. And that's when they tried. That's when, Steam machines would have been born and they would have tried that. And that just didn't work. Microsoft, it's kind of come full circle, and the Windows Store is still junk. It's still an absolute
it's not
a
great.
Complete dumpster fire. Microsoft can't do anything right when it comes to gaming on Windows. So I'm hoping with and they keep doing it every time, like, the next DirectX this is the definitive one for PC gamers. And then, PC gaming still sucks, and it's still like so many issues with PC gaming when, hopefully this time around, like you said, it's their platform. They have Xbox, they have Windows, they have Skype, they have like so much stuff that they can actually utilize.
Yes.
And make this like, this one platform. It's called Xbox One, right? They tried to use this one moniker to make it seem like that, but it was so broken and fragmented. So I'm hoping that, with Xbox, it changes with the Series X and Series S.
Well, yeah, both. I just hope they do this because it will benefit PC gaming when they're finally just focusing on one ecosystem. And that's what I want. And people always ask, like, why do you, I'm like, it's like, dude, I'm not hating on Xbox. I'm telling you, it's pulling resources away from what would make PC better. Yes. And that's why it needs to be one ecosystem. That's why they need to stop. I just don't know.
Microsoft could come out and say, what, if you want the ultimate if you want the ultimate in like, sub $1,000 gaming, you can buy, these Xbox. But if you want the freaking ultimate in gaming, then, by the way, there's still a Microsoft platform because it's on Windows 10 or Windows 11 or whatever the hell comes next, and go, here you go, and go, we are the home to gaming, no matter if you want to do it on your PC, no matter if you want to do it on your laptop or on your Xbox, or by the way, if you want to do cloud gaming, that's on, we've got cloud servers.
Exactly.
Get this huge thing, but make PC the ultimate platform. But it's like Microsoft can't admit that, because then Xbox would look bad. And it's like having multiple. I'm a father, right? So it's like having multiple kids, and one of them is way more successful than the other one, but you got to make the other one feel good. It's like, yeah, but Xbox can kick ass and PC can kick ass, and they're both Microsoft platforms. Why doesn't Microsoft just use all their children and all their like skills levels and actually go like, okay, if you want a game at 4K 120, you can't do that on an Xbox. So here's PC. But if you want a game at 4K 60 with ultra graphics, and you want to spend $2,000, you want to buy an ultra wide monitor and have, a bunch of all like, maybe content creator software on it, well, we'll sell you a cheaper PC. Oh, but if you can't afford that, we'll sell you a $600 Xbox Series X that can do 4K 60, but is at the equivalent of medium graphics on PC. They could really segment their stuff and go like, this is what you get for the money. But they don't do that. They don't care about, it's almost like they don't care about PC. It's almost like they don't care.
I mean, if you look at the original launch of Xbox, Bill Gates literally said this is a Trojan horse to sell Windows in the living room. Yes, so I think there's always been this, kind of schizophrenic approach where they're like, if we could just, well, this is what happens when you have a monopoly. I mean, you have to find way. I mean, they have an OS monopoly. They have to find ways to sell you Windows twice then. And that's what they were trying to do. And I think they're now realizing that they could lose their one monopoly if they don't get their act together. And you're not, I'm just going to say it. You can call me a fanboy. You're not going to beat PlayStation at their own game. So you have to carve out your own market. And then that's how you succeed. It's like all of those. An example I would give was all of these things of like, oh, when is PlayStation going to have a Halo killer? They're not, because Halo's Halo. And if you keep trying to emulate Halo, when is Battlefield going to defeat Call of Duty? Never. But when did they finally outsell them one year? Battlefield 1. They did their own thing. And like you're saying, I don't know about winning or not, or what really winning even means. I think all of the console manufacturers are kind of figuring their own things out now. But like, if they tried the same approach that they've ever tried before, if they don't try to carve out a new niche, I think at first they thought maybe we're going to underestimate PlayStation. I'm just throwing it out there. Nah, they're not gonna roll over if all you're gonna do is try to make the same thing.
Yes, and I think you're right. Like, I think that if Microsoft actually just stepped back out of it, feels like Microsoft, Xbox is wearing a business suit. If they just took off the business suit and put a hoodie on for a little while and just chilled and were like, this is what instead of making it about,
well, this is what we can do well. Like let's be honest, this is what we can do well.
And sticking to that and going, okay, we can't beat all the Sony exclusives. We can't maybe beat them in console sales or whatever, whatever metric they need to quote unquote succeed. To go, okay, you know what we're going to win with? We're going to win with gamers, and we're going to make them happy. How can we make them happy? Okay, if they've got a gaming PC and an Xbox, how can we get them to stay on our platform all the time instead of, how can we get more PC gamers to come on Xbox? You want me to come on Xbox? Make PC gaming better. Who's the one that can do that? Microsoft. Who owns Xbox? Microsoft. There you go. If they made PC gaming if they worked with everyone, maybe go to Steam and Epic and that and make new agreements and go, look, we'll help you on Xbox, because we're working with you, we're working with Ubisoft and Epic and, Valve. And they work with all these companies anyway to release games on console and PC. Go, we fucked up. We couldn't do the Windows Store. We couldn't make it work. We'll have all of your stuff in a gaming portal inside of Windows, and we'll make it awesome. Well, it's not going to be this, shoddy job. We're actually going to, invest in this and make that a winning strategy. Make gaming win. If gaming succeeds, everything else will follow. I would buy an Xbox, and I would probably gain more on my Xbox if it was a lot easier to use everything between my PC and my console. But I'm not going to go buy an Xbox when it's a watered down version of my PC. I'm just going to buy the ultimate. I don't care about that. I want the best. I want the best frames, the best everything. But then there's people that can't afford that, but they might want to go to that. Don't make it so hard for them to get into PC, because if I'm a console gamer and I haven't touched PC for 10 years and I go get a PC and I go to games, it's like Solitaire, Windows Store. What? Candy Crush. What? Where's Call of Duty and Battlefield? Oh, wait, I'm going to go get EA Origin. What's EA Origin? I'm going to go get Uplay. What's Uplay? Because they don't have that on Xbox.
No. Now you need to download Battle.net and the Epic Game Store. Yes. And it's just can you guys, oh my God. I mean, the way I would honestly put it, and it's a way I would put it with so many things when you look at the success of the Switch, it's not about making a competitor's product and then saying, oh, what gimmick will make us win? Again, with the no, Killzone's never going to outsoil Halo, but maybe Uncharted will, because it's a different game. It's about making a product people want to buy.
Yes.
PlayStation's figured out how to make a home console people want. Nintendo's figured out how to make handhelds people want. Microsoft has to find their niche in gaming that makes people want to buy it. Forget about PlayStation. Forget about Nintendo. Just make a good product. A good Microsoft product, because you keep forgetting this. You're Microsoft. Hit my mic.
and you're right. If Microsoft, if they just said, we want to be the home to gaming, that's it. That's simple. Just be the home to gaming and concentrate on that. We promise over the next 5 years, we are going to become the dominant force in gaming. How do you do that? Why don't they ask a question and then, come up with a solution? Mm-hmm. How do we make gaming kick ass, and how do we become the absolute undisputed kings of it? They have billions of users. Sony doesn't have billions of users. Microsoft does. Nintendo doesn't have billions of users. Microsoft does. Across their many services, Microsoft have billions and billions of users. So it's well, tap them. You can go between PC and Xbox and your phone. Why can't I do that? Microsoft could eventually do that. Sony could probably start doing that more with Garreffa.
That's the funny thing too, is if they don't watch their back, there's a lot of evidence Sony's looking to do that too. So it's the same thing with the Steam OS thing. Microsoft, don't you get it? Sony will do it if you don't.
Yes, if you give them enough time, and you look at Sony, right? What's one of their only profitable divisions right now is PlayStation. Makes them a lot of money.
That's all they care about.
You're seeing them change all their focus to pretty much to PlayStation. So what's that going to say going forward 5-10 years? That means that Sony absolutely needs to make PlayStation work. And it means that they are absolutely committed. When Microsoft spread themselves so thin, they're okay, well, Apple's coming up at us against, maybe they're going to come up with, they're working with ARM, they're going to have all their own chips. That's going to be a huge shift for the market. Then you're looking at Qualcomm are trying to come in and knock on Microsoft's door. You've got, Nvidia and AMD both fighting each other with drivers on Windows. It's why doesn't Microsoft just come as the dad and just go look, this is what we need to do, and I'm going to organize everything. But they don't even care. They just release Xbox, and Xbox is its own little island. That's Windows can't go over there. Nothing can go over there. It's why? Just make gaming awesome. That's I don't get it. It really sucks.
Well, I think they're waking up and switching gears. It's safe to say I'm not a morning person. Most days I try to sleep in as much as possible. Still, sometimes I just need to get up early, whether for a conference call or just simply to get a video done on time. When I do this, great coffee definitely helps, especially when it doesn't skimp on the caffeine and it actually is priced
reasonably, like it is at thehenma.com, where you can choose between delicious flavors like Highlander Grog and chocolate raspberry. And you know what? Unlike most artisanal coffee I've tried, it actually wakes you up and it tastes great. The HENDMA.com. Use offer code Moore's Law, that's MOORESLAW, to get 10% off right now your coffee orders. And do make sure you use these guys if you need coffee, because coffee is their passion. And right now, this is a side hustle they're trying to grow into a bigger business out of Norman, Oklahoma. They could use your help if you could use a good cup of coffee. For my new benchmarking station, I did use a legitimate key of Windows 10 Professional, and that's because it's just not expensive if you go to CDK Offers. They did sponsor me to say this, but I used their website, and it works well. They have great customer support, and if you use offer code Broken Silicon, you'll get 25% off Windows software, and Die Shrink gets you 3% off all software on the website, including game codes. I will reiterate, it was really easy for me to actually set up an account on this website, search for Windows, buy the code using whatever payment method I wanted, and they do have several options, and then I simply got sent the authentic key and downloaded Windows 10 from Microsoft's website. Save yourself some money to get more bones for your dog, and don't stress yourself out using illegitimate keys. These are real keys, and they did sponsor this part of the video. So one more time, that's cdkoffers.com. Use Die Shrink for 3% off all software on the website, including Steam games, and Broken Silicon for 25% off software. All right, now let's get to the benchmark.
A little bit here. Steak and Chicken Man writes in, and he says, in the last 20 years or so, we've had three main time periods: the early 2000s with tons of competition, the era of Intel's dominance, and now I guess I'll call it the AMD Resurgence era. How have you seen tech journalism change in each of these time periods?
That's such a good question. Tech journalism, leaks. Oh, if you go back to maybe, now remember, I've been writing for TweakTown, it'll be 10 years next month. When I started, there were nearly no leaks. You had a couple of leaks like forums and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there were no big tech sites. YouTube wasn't really a thing. Being a tech YouTuber wasn't a thing. So you didn't have a lot of these leaks. I think that's changed, where you're getting this, instead of maybe 2 or 3 months before the release, you'd have a bunch of leaks, or you'd have more information, or you'd have retail packages that were being leaked out from the manufacturer. Now it's you're hearing specs that are 18 months away. You're hearing all random rumors. A lot of people just make BS up because they just want clicks. I think a lot of that's changed, where now it's who do you trust? So then you got to wait for multiple generations of leaks to be able to go, well, that guy was 75% correct most of the time, and he was 80%. This guy was total BS, and I think that's changed a lot. Where I think that's the big change. I think tech journalism has changed so much, where now anyone can just write content, right? You don't to have years and years of experience. I think that those people will have obviously a little bit more respect, I guess, in the industry. But I think that the tech journalism itself has just changed so much, so much. And I think leaks are probably the largest part of that.
It's interesting you say that, because I don't remember, and I guess I didn't pay as much attention to it 10 years ago because I didn't have a channel built around everything you just said. But it's I just don't remember. Even if you just go into the archives of Anantech or something, you don't see as many leak articles now. And now it's now there's entire websites built around it, entire channels.
Yes.
I mean, I would hope mine isn't. I think in some ways it's considered built around leaks now, but that's just kind of what's gotten me a lot of subscribers. I mean, I just try to think of putting out interesting opinions. Let's touch on that though. So how do you, because a lot of people wonder this, including me sometimes, how do you look at all of these leaks coming out? Because sometimes it can become, just speaking personally, a little frustrating. It's well, I talked to 3 different people. This person I've talked to has been right 3 times before. That's where this Ampere leak's coming from. But then, like, sometimes the video does well, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes there's an article, for instance, on WCCF Tech, just written about one tweet that's 20 characters. Yeah. It's like, how do you think about, I don't know, all of that, even how you decide what to write an article about yourself?
For me, I don't know, so again, like I said, I started about 10 years ago, so about tail end of 2010. And I had come from I did 10 years of IT retail. So I was selling custom computers and I was on forums, constantly getting all the latest information. So I'd stay ahead for my customers, just for myself pretty much, because I was just a massive enthusiast anyway. But I think that's, a lot of that's changed in those times. And you're seeing for example, right? You go back to the Fermi launch. That was another one of the questions in the list. Where you go back to them, there was nothing. And so then now, you go back to those days as well. There was no social media. There was no 24/7 Facebook and Twitter and hashtags and any of that. Where now, if you wanted to get information, you pretty much just went to your PC. Smartphones weren't really relevant back then. You didn't have massive amounts of information coming to you all the time. Then fast forward to now, and you've got smartphones. So you can have people that wake up in the morning and they're going to check Google News, and then Google News is going to pick up SEO. So then you constantly have to be writing about that. Ampere, RDNA 2, GeForce RTX. You write the right words to get your SEO up and to go to Google News. So then you got to constantly write about that stuff 24 hours a day, right? You can't just go back in the day of 10 years ago before I started. What attracted people to websites to make money from advertising was, a review. And then, you were a big coveted website like Tom's Harbor and Nantucket, like TweakTown's been around for 20 years as well. You went to the big sites and that's how they made their money. But then, there were lots of hardware releases back then and the advertising money was a lot higher. Now that advertising money has dropped all the way up. And so then now people need to get all this clickbaity kind of shit out. So then they're writing constant articles, but then you need the SEO. So it's like this self-feeding machine that it sucks. I see the comments all the time. Why do you write about every single thing that comes out? It's like, well, you're clicking it, are you? So
yeah,
that's the thing. That's what I need you to do. If you don't like it, don't click. I'm not asking. I'm not making you pay for it, right? So now it's become this thing where if you don't write it all the time, then your SEO tanks. So then you kind of need to stay on it all the time. That means you need to be reporting about every goddamn leak. It could be the smallest thing to the largest thing. But then I think for me, I've always, again, when I started 10 years ago, tech news wasn't really even a thing. There wasn't a 24-hour news cycle. It was pretty much just people going, here's a link to, other websites, like a roundup, like a roundup every day or every week there was a roundup, where I came in and I'm like, well, I'm just going to write news all the time. I'm not going to care about the time and I'm going to do it every day.
Yeah,
because that's what I wanted.
That in your history.
Yes, and that's what I said in my history. That's what I wanted, and in my history, my boss was like, stop writing American news. You have to write Australian news. I'm like, but Australia sucks. There's nothing that happens in this country. We're so behind America, and I'm a huge fan of America, and I love the States. So
USA.
Yes, I trust me. I'm a big fan. I've been there. So I've been to the country 30, 40 times now. And
there's been quieter times here. Unfortunately, right now is not the best time to visit.
Right now it's not the best time. And I was actually
I apologize.
GTC. I was meant to be there for GTC, and then it all got pulled out. So, but no, when I started, I was meant to only do Australian news, and then it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just started writing more and more news, and then it kind of tech news kind of started. And I don't think it was me, but it just happened around that time that everything was changing. And then social media came out. I dived on Facebook, with TweakTown, I just dived on Facebook. So we compete with Tom Tarver and stuff like that on Facebook. It's huge, but that's because of you have to be on it every single day. I work probably 80 to 100 hours a week.
And it's hard to not get addicted to working on it too, because you actually do love it. I love covering this stuff. They're like, get some sleep, and it's like, we'll see.
Yeah. That's it. Well, I'm the same. I'm addicted. I love this stuff. I love my job. I love the community. I love having a voice. It's just awesome. I absolutely love what I do, and that's why I work. It's not work. What did they say? If you find a job that you love, you won't work a day in your life. That's that type of mantra that you can have. I love writing about this stuff. It's exciting, even if it's little bits. I'm excited. So then I put that excitement into my post. I'm like, this is going to be kick ass. If it's 40% up faster, holy shit, guys, like you're gonna be able to buy like, an RTX, like all the leaks that you're talking about as well. You're gonna be able to buy an RTX 3060-ish card for, the price, like $500-$600. That's exciting to talk about. It's not like, oh yeah, it's gonna be 5% faster than the last card, 10% more expensive. It's not boring stuff. It's cool. It's exciting. I think tech news has just evolved completely with social media. Social media has been a large drive. Yeah. Because people want their information differently. People don't have the attention, and I did this with TweakTown myself. People don't have the attention span to sit there and read a 10,000 word review, right? So
sometimes,
they don't want to read.
Not always though.
There's nerds, or no, there's nerds. There's the people that love that stuff, and I like to do that with stuff that I like to read about. But when it's news, you don't want to read like say a 1 or 2 or 3,000 word kind of like news article. You want something really quick because that's what news is these days. People like social media. Social media can just be one tweet, and one tweet can be more powerful than, $100 million of marketing from a company. It just depends on how it's delivered. So I don't know. I think news and tech journalism, and not just tech journalism, I think journalism in general has changed.
Yes.
Because of social media, and our attention spans are smaller. People have less time than they did 10 years ago as well. Yeah. 10 years ago, you can sit there and be like doing reading for hours. Now, you don't have that kind of time anymore.
Well, one thing I would say that I think a lot of websites and YouTubers grapple with is this thing of like, it's becoming more and more obvious to me that you got to be passionate about it and do what you think you're going to be enthusiastically doing. You don't need to review every product. You actually don't. That's how it used to work, because people don't need to go to TweakTown or Anantech or Hardware Unboxed YouTube channel and look at every single one of your reviews. If you have the time and the team and you can do that, then do it. But the fact is, there's not just Hardware Unboxed. There's Gamers Nexus. There's Linus Tech Tips. There's me sometimes. There's all these other channels. And people will just look at an aggregate of their favorite 5 or 10. And so just do what you're going to do well. You'll get into the next cycle. And I think that's something where you see some. So I've personally seen some YouTubers burn out doing like 100 motherboard reviews in a month. And it's like, dude, those are not. In fact, I've thought about it. If someone offered me a review for a motherboard, I would say no.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it.
No, and especially motherboards. There's a lot that goes into that. Because
you're basically reviewing all the components that make the motherboard work. And and it's also the least interesting thing to review.
Yes,
I think.
Absolutely. Well, that's why I like to review graphics cards, right?
Of course. You just put them right in the machine. I don't need to do anything.
That's it. They're the most exciting part of the system for me.
Kiwi Phil writes in and he says, do you think that tech journalism has changed for the better?
Yes and no. I think that's part of what I was saying before, where like now, if you want, the latest leaks on RDNA 2 and Ampere, and you go to Google, type in, you have a million leaks. You have a million news articles and YouTube videos and stuff like that you can consume. So I think that's changed, and I think that's for the better. But then I also think it's for the worse as well. Like you do get some sites and some social media accounts and YouTubers, like, again, if you know what you're talking about and then you read someone else or you watch someone else and they don't know what they're talking about, or they're like, I've heard from an anonymous source. It's like, but I've never seen you anywhere. And I've been to like, every event that, you can imagine with all these people, and I have never seen your face. So it's like, who are you actually talking to? So I don't know. There's good and bad. I think tech journalism has gotten better with, there's a lot more people out there doing this job now. And I think that I'm someone who likes every drip and drop of information. So then I want it constantly. So then that's good for me. But then I think it's gotten worse because then now you're not having as much deep reporting. You're not having like as much fact checking, like it's all leaks and purported specs and, all that kind of stuff. But then I love that. So there's good and bad. And that's asking me, I like and don't like that stuff.
Yeah. And I think another thing is, and I sometimes kind of segue into another subject, but like I get asked this question, like, why do you cover this? And in fact, I've had people recently say, well, what if, I know you put in all this effort, but what if it doesn't even turn out correct? Like, for instance, there are some leaks where I think the information was legitimate, but the product just didn't pan out, right, in the version they sold to consumers. And so you can be wrong without actually being wrong. Yes. But it's like, I just think people need to take a chill pill and realize I'm covering this because I like talking about it.
Yes.
And you guys got to calm down, man.
Yes. And if they don't want to watch it or read it, don't watch it and read it. No one's holding a gun to your head going, you need to watch this, or else you don't get to walk outside today. No one's doing that. And again, but you know what? One of the first things, Cameron, the owner of TweakTown, one of the first things he told me when I very first started TweakTown is like, don't read the comment section. Don't read it. You don't need to. It's very hard. So like I kind of have a disconnect and a reconnect every now and again. If I because I'm writing so many leaks and stuff like that, you are going to get someone that's going to come in and be negative and say that, and it can be draining. It's like, dude, like do you know how much time I spend away from my children to work? Like this is not fucking easy. It's really hard. Like I have caused so many I barely have a social life because I love my job so much. But then you get someone that comes in and just knocks it all over like a Jenga tower. It's like, oh, okay, no worries. But then, I don't know, there's good and bad with that.
Well, one of the most deflating to enthusiasm things, I'll describe it in comments I'll see is, have you considered doing this for higher quality? Or like, have you considered doing this thing? And it's like you already are, or they have no... Sometimes I just feel like people just have no comprehension of how much effort goes into it, though. Where they're just like, did you think? It's like, yeah, man, I thought about that. And it's like, or like, why didn't you do this? Because that would have taken an entire week.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I could have done it in an hour. All right, do it then.
Yeah. And it's and the same. I get the same thing. I'll get comments. Why don't you tear apart the graphics cards and show me how it works? And it's like, okay, like I bought from 3DFX till now, and I've never needed to take apart a graphics card. But if you want to do that, the guys at Gamers Nexus, hardware unboxed, they kick ass at that stuff.
Dude,
go check
exactly.
It out. Done. Right? I'll give you the leaks, and I'll give you all this, and I'll give you these games, or I'll give you my personal opinion on it. I'll actually do this with it or that with it that they might not do. But like, if you want to go check that stuff out, and I don't have 40 hours to go and do that, and I don't have a team of like 7 people that are going to go and do that for me. If you want to give me $400,000 a year to spend on staff, okay, I'll go and do it. But again, I don't think the clips on that are going to be very good. Like, watch this graphics card; they're taken apart. Like the one out of 100,000 people that will do that with this card.
Well, yeah, like I'll do a review. I just did a review for a 4K monitor. I've done a review for the 3950X. It's just stuff I buy for work or for fun. And I'm like, when I want to break from looking at leaks, because I do get tired of it sometimes, I'll just go, you know what, I'm going to do a review this week. It's going to get 1/10 the clicks, by the way, of one of my leaks. But I just can't look at Ampere information right now.
Yes.
So I'm going to start doing this. And then I'll say, but you know what? This is just my impression of the 3950X. Like I play Mountain Blade, and I've noticed, surprisingly, the frame rate's higher than my old i7. And look at that. It's actually better multi-threaded, this old game, than I ever thought it would be. And, that's what I'm bringing to the table as my own experience. Because, and then they'll say, well, it's because you're lazy. It's just like, there's no world where I do as good a job at looking at frame pacing as Tech Power Up. Or Tech Spot. It's like, I'm not going to. And I wouldn't, you're using their bar graphs for part of the review. Yeah, because I trust them, right?
Yes. And that's it. And I like you said, I think a lot of people, I don't know, a lot of people don't see how hard, like you're saying, we're both been saying, a lot of people don't see this as being hard. Like they just think it's easy. I can just open up a website or a YouTube channel. It's like my kids at school, like, their friends are like, and even my kids sometimes, but I try to like drum it out of them a lot. They're like, I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up. It's like, but that's not.
Well, or
you don't.
You want to do a certain thing, and if it happens to work out on YouTube, good.
That's right. Run a business of doing something else, and then exactly, if it's succeeds on YouTube where you can do something different, then yes. But like, they want to be a YouTuber because that's cool. It's like, but you can't just watch a really nicely made. Like, look at Linus. Do you really think he's benchmarking and writing the scripts and recording the video and editing the video and doing the business and doing the advertising and like going away on trips?
It would honestly be irresponsible if he was, because he'd be such a bottleneck.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is a lot of people just see, they see a really nice, and they do great stuff. You see a really nicely made video and it looks really nice and it's edited well. It's like, but that's not just one guy, but so much of the world just thinks I can do that. Like I could grab a monitor and I can grab I get a keyboard or a graphics card. I can review that on YouTube. It's like, yeah, okay. You probably could, but how many graphics cards have you owned in your life? 2? Okay, well, I'm not going to read your review. Like, sorry, like how many, how long have you been using PCs for? Like, well, 3 years. I can be a YouTuber and talk about PC hardware. Unless you're doing something different, it's not going to work, unfortunately.
Well,
it's really hard.
really doing this type of work, it becomes humbling. The more you do it, the more you realize you don't know anything, and you're never going to know anything. And it is funny to see people usually on Reddit arguing. And like, I busted out laughing one time because he was like, did you see this like one mistake he made here? Yeah. And then someone replies to him, I've noticed your comments on Reddit are really smart. You could probably do a better job than him. And he's like, yeah, I've thought about it. And I'm just like, then do it. Do it. Half of it, and I discussed this with Steve at Hardware Unboxed on an episode. Like, half of it isn't even just getting it right or doing or putting in the extra effort. It's just getting up and doing it. Like, it's getting up. And like today, we started this podcast 2 hours late because I said, no, the video is done today because it needs to be. And like, most of it is actually just doing that work for 40 hours straight sometimes. Like the nightmares I've heard of Zen 1 reviews.
Oh, yes.
Well, let me ask you that. Let's segue a little bit away from what I'm sure they'll say in the comments. Listen to these two babies complain. Which, fair enough. But let's segue to Zen 1. This is a question I like to ask everyone I have on who's been, following the space for a while, just because I do think this is kind of the AMD resurgence period. Like, what did you expect out of Zen 1 before it came out?
What did I don't know. I heard I was very involved with a lot of the leaks with Zen 1. Right. So I don't know if anyone, I don't know if you know or anyone that's listening knows, but I was the first one to actually use the word Ryzen. So I actually had a massive leak. So
you're a good person to ask, Ben.
Yes. So I was right in the middle of that, and no one believed me and everyone called me out. It's not going to be called Ryzen. They're never going to call it Ryzen. Rah, 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 rah. And they were wrong. So I was in the thick of that. And so I kind of had the hype, I had a lot of hype from all these leaks that I was getting told from, not just from within AMD, from, other companies as well. And I'm like, again, I'm very hesitant at that stage. I'm like, well, hold on a minute. I haven't touched an AMD CPU for years. I am Intel exclusive because, again, like I said, for this whole conversation, I'm a massive enthusiast of the best performance that I can get, no matter what. I don't care how much power it consumes or how hot it is. If it's the best, then I want it. So I'm like, there's no way AMD is going to do, something within the first, this new Zen CPU, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then it was good. It wasn't the best. It was good. So I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, well, I'm not going to use it. I had a Ryzen 7 1800X at the time. I used it, but my Intel system just kicked its ass because I'm gaming on high frames, right?
Right.
So
right.
At the time, the Ryzen CPUs,
yeah.
I think I had a 6700K, and then I think a 7700K right after that at the time of the Ryzen launching. And I'm like, nah, whatever. Second generation launches, and that motherboard manufacturers start to take it more seriously. Our system builders are going to start, changing their systems over to a second generation platform. But then with Ryzen 3000 series, it's like, okay, now they're in business. So when it first came out, I was like, again, it was good. It was good to see AMD finally back.
So you followed all of those leaks, though. And let me answer what I say, just to kind of frame up what I mean. When I saw the early leaks, they were comparing it to Broadwell. Like, I was basically like, if it could just be Sandy Bridge IPC clocked at 3.5 gigahertz, but let's say they actually give us 8 cores at the same power usage as Intel, I'll be blown away. But then what it turned out is they actually gave us Broadwell IPC clocked at almost 4 gigahertz at less power usage most of the time. And in that way, it actually outperformed my expectations. And I had pretty big expectations. Yeah. There were so many people being like, it's going to be Bulldozer 2.0.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
So would you say it overperformed your expectations?
Oh, definitely. I think, I expected to do well, but delivering 16 threads at that price, it didn't even need to match Intel's performance. It just needs to go, hey, Intel, here's 16 threads, for less money. Might not beat you, but if you're doing games and multitasking and, something else, then here we are. Intel never really bragged about that in those days where AMD just came out of nowhere with a 16-threaded CPU. That was amazing. But again, like we were talking about before, how much of that was thanks to the development of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X? Because all of that would have been discussed back then. That would have been the roadmap, like all the chiplet architecture and stuff like that. That all mattered.
Because the Jaguar they were using was almost a 2-chiplet Jaguar, frankly.
Yes.
So Sub-Zero writes in and he says the GTX 980 Ti was $650. The 1080 Ti was $700. I guess we could just say that one's inflation, maybe. But then the 2080 Ti is $1,000. I'd say it's $1,300, guys. Considering the fact that AMD has something big coming, do you think prices will fall or stay the same this fall?
They have to fall. I think that obviously NVIDIA could charge whatever they wanted to previous generation because AMD didn't have a competitor, but they do now. You know, the 5700 XT is a great card. You know, it's not obviously top tier enthusiast card, but for, you know, sub $500-600, it kicks ass. Mm-hmm. So I think that the next generation, whatever comes out in the mid range, like you were talking about before in a previous video and all the other leaks that have come out, a 3060-ish card is going to most likely offer 2080 Ti-ish performance for the 600, 650 max kind of market.
Especially if you consider ray tracing.
Exactly right. So, and you consider that ray tracing might not be important, you know, for the last 18 months, but as soon as the next generation consoles are out and these games start coming out, that's going to become more and more important. And it's going to become a new performance metric, no matter what, whether we like it or not. Ray tracing is here to stay. Mm-hmm. So then, you know, will they get cheaper? I think so. But I think it's not getting cheaper. It's about offering more performance for that price bracket. Everyone wants everything to be cheaper and cheaper. I want to be able to do 4K 60 for $199. And you know, that's not going to happen. You know, I think that 650 range is where we're gonna see everything top out. But then I really think that Nvidia is going to come out with something much better than that. But
a 7-nanometer version is what I'm expecting. They just can't make it because of capacity competition with AMD. Correct. That is honestly what I think, and you can kind of see me in my leaks saying it more and more. I really think they just have no choice, and so there's like, fine, 350 watt 8-nanometer. Yep.
But that's that moment that I want. You know, that's that. Right now, I'm a huge movie fan, and I'm a massive Superman fan. I don't know if you've seen Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice.
I have not seen that one, no.
Okay, well, you've probably seen the trailer.
I saw Man of Steel, and I've seen enough about it. I've seen clips and stuff.
Well, there's a scene about halfway through the movie when Batman and Superman fight, and Superman throws Batman through the building, and he just hovers down, and he's like, if I wanted it, you'd be dead already. Obviously, he's Superman, and Batman's just a normal human being, and if he wanted it, he would be dead in a snap of Superman's fingers. Mm-hmm. You know, that's Nvidia to AMD for the last 10 years, right?
Sure.
But that is no longer the case. You know, that's no longer the case. So then I think that we're going to see, everyone's expecting this battle to be the exact same. Like, $650 card by Nvidia. AMD is going to release a $599 card. It's going to offer 10% more performance, and then Nvidia is going to do a price drop, and you know it's not going to happen like that. I think you're going to see.
I think AMD could win, guys. I think AMD actually could win,
and I think that's the big thing is that a lot of people aren't expecting that. But just watch what happened with Zen to Zen 2 to Zen 3. You know, we're at RDNA 2 now, so if that is twice the performance of RDNA 1, then people are going to sit down and listen. And they're going to be like, well, holy crap, you know, you're actually equaling NVIDIA performance at current generation, obviously, 2080 Super, 2080 Ti. But then NVIDIA, again, like the Superman I just said in that story, they're going to be like, well, did you really think that's all we had? You know, like, cool, AMD's just blown every single, like, you know, bullet out. And then they're like, well, you know, we've got something else. You know, there's a surprise here, and bam, 3080 Ti or 3090. And I don't know if you watched read what I've been saying, but I want to see the return of the Ultra moniker. I want to see like a 3090 Ultra. I want to see the return of Ultra.
Yeah. I think they're going to try to do that too. You know, I think that's their plan. Is they're just, I really do think, and again, I've said this in a million videos, they are bidding TSMC against Samsung. It backfired on them. They have to go with Samsung, but that, you know, and I discussed this with John Petty in a podcast as well. And he's just like, look, if you think NVIDIA, when they're threatened, isn't going to bring out the big guns, they're going to. And so I think I think you could see AMD win this fall. But if that's going to happen, NVIDIA probably already knows it's going to happen. And so they're prepping for some big, probably, like, I really do think there's a chance what we see this fall is like a 3080 Ti and a 3080. I'm just making sure I'm not mixing up the names. And then maybe a 3090, I'm not sure. But then they bring out like a 7-nanometer version of the same 102, and it's like the Titan and the 3090. At least I know they could do that.
Yes, and I think that they will. NVIDIA. I don't know how much you hear about how Jensen is in person, but he's someone that he doesn't want to lose. He will not lose. He will not. And he will come out all guns blazing against AMD. Whatever the fuck AMD have behind the scenes, however good it is, I can put down good money that NVIDIA is just like, it doesn't matter, guys. NVIDIA's been fighting this whole battle with one hand tied behind its back. Imagine if you could allow 2080 Ti to actually use 400 watts of power and let it go, like let it get hot, let it run up to 80 degrees, let it just go, let it go, like, let the voltage just go. You know, there's tons of headroom in those things. You know, they're capped at like 2,000 megahertz, 2,200 megahertz. They can do 2,500 plus. You know, imagine if it was actually properly optimized for that. You know, imagine if NVIDIA didn't really care. I think that NVIDIA...
Who doesn't have a 750 watt power supply, honestly? And it's like anyone buying a $1,000 card has a 750 watt power supply. I have a compact build. I have a 750 watt small form factor power supply with 4 8-pin connectors. I could power that in my tiny little console sized PC already. So... And honestly, I think that's what AMD is doing too. And again, I said that in my newest video. The impression I get is that Lisa wants to win bad, even if it's just for a month. She doesn't. She wants to make her. I think it's cousin's or uncle's second remove, Jensen, mad this fall. Which is so interesting to think that they're like from the same village. It's a pretty smart place, I guess. But it doesn't matter. They want to deliver double 5700 XT performance. If it takes 400 watts. Why not? Who cares? They made a 500 watt card before. They don't care.
That excites me. It feels like that's like a proper, I don't know, boxing match. Like right now, it feels like NVIDIA's out of it and AMD's in the middle just kind of like fighting themselves and like, whoa, yeah, we're winning. You know, like, you know, VR isn't just for the 1%. And they got all this BS kind of radio and rebellion. They don't really know what they were doing. But now they're like in the ring with NVIDIA finally. And I think that NVIDIA will actually take that first punch. You know, RDNA 2 will be that first punch where NVIDIA...
I think they know they have to, that they screwed up. They got too arrogant with like the
same with Intel. NVIDIA has done exactly the same with Intel. They stayed a little bit too complacent. Intel obviously lost out with...
let's be clear. Intel really screwed up.
They really screwed up badly there. You could do a serious podcast alone on how badly Intel's managed themselves over the last 10 years. But NVIDIA, they haven't really badly managed themselves. It's just that they've been way too cocky. They just think that they're the absolute champion. We can charge whatever the hell we want for our cards and people will just eat it up. We can release ray tracing, change the entire goddamn name of our cards from GeForce GTX to RTX. And really, ray tracing is just a tech demo for now. But we'll still charge, you know, $1,000 plus for a card.
And that backfired on them too. So really the stage is set for people. They want NVIDIA to lose this time too. I think people are really, and you know, it's a funny thing too. When you talk to people within NVIDIA, they want AMD to do well. They don't care. They're just, they're like, cool.
Well, it's good for them. It keeps them more in business. You know, you want your competitor to be constant. Like if NVIDIA won this generation by the same gap that they have between the 5700 XT and the 2080 Ti, AMD will be out of business this generation. But for their graphics card department, they'll be done. You know, they might have success in CPU, they'll roll it into APU, but AMD isn't going to let that happen. You know, a lot of people don't have that faith in AMD, but it's not even faith. It's like they've proven themselves now.
They're not idiots, right?
They're not idiots.
Like that's what it comes down to. Is it's not a matter of faith. It's not a matter of, you know, always AM delusional fanboys. You know, all of those memes. It's like, do you just see what they did to Intel? You really think they can't try to do that to NVIDIA?
In that defense, playing devil's advocate, then HBCC is going to change the world. HBM2 is going to change the world. Vega is going to be the best card ever. You know, so gamers are also confused by a lot of
poor Volta.
Yeah, poor Volta, exactly. You know, but again, those people went to Intel, and those people no longer work at Intel, so they've lost that. You know, they've lost that kind of like these buzzwords like HBCC is going to change the world, and HBCC is kind of already in consoles. If you look at all the stuff that's going on, it's kind of like the best parts of HBCC that actually work and kick ass. But it's like, all those people are gone from AMD, so you're not having this whole like, else we'd have poor Ampere by now. If I was the person that did that stuff at AMD, I won't say their name, then I would be trolling everyone right now, because I know that trolling is what people want. People want it. People want NVIDIA to take a punch. People want to see NVIDIA with a tooth missing and blood coming out of their face, because you know that they're not just going to go, and cry to their mummy and be like, it's not fair. AMD beat us with one generation. They're going to come back with a much bigger stick, and they're going to start swinging back. And that is what, not just I want, gamers want.
And they won't stop swinging for a few years because they will remember. And that's what happened with Fermi, where they got, I think, right before Fermi, super cocky. And then from AMD, from Radeon, the HD 4000 series came, and then the 5000, and even the 6000, though it didn't quite win. I mean, it was more efficient and better priced. And then the 7000 series won. And so once Nvidia got on top, they didn't sit around. They got Maxwell and then Pascal. It took just absolute utter destruction of their competition for them to get even a little lazy.
Well, speaking of that, Fermi is what gave me my job, right? If you look at my Twitter handle,
I saw that, yeah.
My Twitter handle is Anthony256. It's from the GeForce 256. I was just a huge fan of technology. So when the GeForce 256 launched, that was my online nickname from then. But with Fermi, I started with TweakTown because I was on Overclockers Australia, which was, I think it's the largest forum here in Australia. And me and Sean Baker, the then VGA card editor at the time, we were like just debating. We were saying Fermi's going to suck. Fermi's so bad, rah, 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 rah. And we're one of the only two that are on Overclockers Australia saying, and I'm a huge Nvidia fanboy. And everyone's like, you're an AMD fanboy.
Oh, I know,
like,
right?
Dude, look at my name. My name is Anthony256. You can't sit there and call me a fan. And even though I say Anthony256, it doesn't make me a blind fanboy to Nvidia. Fermi suck. But like you said, they learned from that. 500 series wasn't that great, but they came back with 600. 780 Ti, man. 980 Ti. 1080 Ti. But they kind of lost it with 2080 Ti, right? That same energy was kind of like gone. They need that again. But I think that they'll, instead of receiving a hit and going down for too long, maybe they might take a hit with the next 3 to 4 months. But then, Q1 2021, they come out with a, 7nm, 3090, 3080 Ti, 3080 Ultra, whatever they call it. That would be good enough. Maybe they'll take the hit and let everyone think, oh, look, Nvidia's been destroyed. Oh, AMD's beat them, rah, 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 rah. And then they come out with something that just absolutely annihilates, AMD. But
and the thing that really excites me is, sometimes you just need to get reminded you can lose it in a second if you put your guard down. But I think Nvidia is going to come out with some crazy, powerful stuff late this year and early next year. And I would just remind everyone that, like, if Nvidia takes the crown back, and I expect them to, honestly, but RDNA 3 is 3x. They want to add another 50% performance to RDNA 2 late next year. And guys, I think they might, I think they're going to go to 5 nanometer. I was looking at the wafer contracts in one video, and I did the math, and I'm like, they're going to be making more 5 nanometer chips mid next year than they were early 2019, 7 nanometer. So I'm like, they're making something on 5 nanometer. They have an agreement, guys. They have an agreement to start making 5 nanometer chips in a couple months, just so you know. They're making something. Now, I think it's APUs first and maybe like a specialty version of Milan, but I can bet they're going to go to RDNA 3 on 5 nanometer late next year. And the way people at Sony talk, it's like they expect AMD to add some type of lightning fast SSD built onto the graphics card soon. Yes. And it's like, so yeah, Nvidia is going to punch back, but that's what excites me. AMD is going to punch back pretty hard next year again, I think. And the things I'm hearing about Hopper is some people say Hopper's actually the Pascal, that's actually the big one, not Ampere. And it's like, so just, you guys got to buckle up, because I think the next few years is going to be absolutely absurd, better than the 2000s in terms of competition.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And I am so excited. It's hard to even explain. I can't wait, because I think it's just going to be crazy. And you know what? We haven't even talked about Intel. This is just Nvidia and AMD.
Wait 1 second. Fat Boy Diesel writes in, and he says, "Big Z win for gaming."
I can't see it, man. I love Raja Kaduri. I've spent a lot of time with him, just one-on-one, just hanging out, eating ice cream in the middle of Vegas when it's 2 degrees.
Too, and he's a fun guy. He really he is smart. He's not stupid. People act like he's dumb because of Vega. No, he's smart.
No. AMD really, hamstrung him with Vega, but he's smart. And I don't know. I think a lot of people are thinking oh my God, Intel's going to come out and they're going to have a graphics card that will compete with Nvidia and AMD in a single generation. Okay, hate to break it to you, that's not going to happen. Like one, that's not going to happen. Two, I had an Intel i740 and it wasn't that great back in the day. You know, Intel had the same thing. We're going to come out and destroy everyone. And it didn't do anything. You know, it's going to take years and years to build up, like, you know, support and drivers. You know, software is important. You know, look at Nvidia and AMD. Like, Nvidia's software, like, I have less problems with GeForce graphics cards than I do with Radeon. You just have to say it. There are issues with AMD. You know, it's gotten a lot better.
So actually, I've had more problems with Nvidia drivers until last fall, though. I just have to admit that the late 2019 drivers for AMD were the first time where I was like, oh, this reminds me of Fermi.
Yes. Oh, yeah, those.
So you'll at least admit Fermi's drivers were a nightmare.
Oh, no, of course. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's like a...
That made me swear off NVIDIA for like a decade. It was so bad for me.
Yeah.
But going back to Z, though.
No, I think that Z will... I don't know. I cannot see Z coming out before 2023, 24 and actually, you know, having like GeForce, like flagship levels of performance. And a lot of people are just expecting it's going to be overnight. No, Intel have probably had this massive reorg and they're planning things for the next 5 to 10 years. You know, they're lost in modems, they're lost in CPU, they're lost in GPU, they've lost all over the place. So now they have to win again. You know, I've had sources that tell me that the stuff that's coming out from Intel in the CPU division, late 21 in 22, is going to be insane. So then, you know, they're not going to lay down. Do you think they're just going, oh, cool, Zen 2, oh, that's hurting us. Zen 3, oh, cool, that's even hurt us even more. Zen 4, no worries. Zen 5, like, load it on. Like, you know, we've lost, you know, 60% of our market share. That's not going to happen. So, like, what happens if they have a CPU and GPU that, you know, actually annihilates? And I don't think it'll be the form of, like, a graphics card. What happens if we're moving more towards the cloud? You know, what are graphics cards going to look like in 2025? Are they going to be this card that still goes into your machine, or will it be an external Thunderbolt? Oh, who owns Thunderbolt? You know, let's start thinking about where this kind of goes. It doesn't need to be a graphics card. You know, it can be something else. Graphics cards can evolve.
I think it's going to be a giant APU eventually. That's what I honestly think.
And it makes more sense. Look at the NUC, right? The NUC is pretty much like the Intel version of releasing their own kind of console in a way. Like, what happens if Microsoft's next console is an Intel chip? We don't know that.
The original Xbox was.
That's correct. Exactly right. And people don't realize that the original Xbox was just, you know, literally off-the-shelf hardware. It wasn't that crazy. It wasn't a custom silicon that they're having now, a semi-custom design from AMD and Sony and Microsoft. You know, maybe Intel's playing a long game. And so we all think, or not we, I think a lot of the world thinks Intel's going to come out and have like a GeForce and Radeon competitor on day one. I don't think it's going to be like that. And I still remember when I wrote a story about this, saying that my source told me that the first kits of Z were going to be a developer kit. I had industry analysts coming up to me and like, where did you hear that? Like massive analysts, like, we're not hearing that. How are you hearing that? It's like, well, I'm talking to someone. It's not a developer kit. It's not a developer kit. You know, fast forward 3 weeks and, you know, Intel comes out. Yeah, this is a developer kit. You know, we don't know what's coming with Intel. Everyone thinks it's going to be a GeForce and Radeon competitor. But years from now, a big, huge APU that starts to, you know, knock AMD and especially AMD around. They don't care about Nvidia right now. They just need to win HPC, which they can do that with like crazy HPC stuff. But I don't think we're going to see GeForce competitors in the next few years.
Well, so, and it's funny because I think, again, like, I know my Ampere videos get the most views, and that doesn't really surprise me. But, and man, if I put RDNA in the title, there's a way to get clicks. Like, I have to stop so I don't turn into clickbait. But like, I think my Intel info is actually the most accurate, like the most stuff I'm confident in. Like, it's to the degree where one of my sources, like, I basically have Intel's roadmaps now. Like, just to be honest, like, and one of them, I had like something that they're planning to use, I think, past Lunar Lake. I don't even know if I've technically told anyone I know what that is, or Meteor Lake and all this stuff. And like, I won't say what it is until I make the video, but just for people who work at Intel, it starts with an R and then it ends with a D, and then there's Cove. And I sent that and I crossed it out and sent it to someone who worked at Intel, and he goes, how the hell do you know what? And he said the name of the cove is. And so I don't say that to like brag, or it's just, I'm letting you know when I say I'm confident in my Intel info, that's what I'm telling you. And I've had Z info for a while now that no one seems to care about, by the way. But my understanding is Z works. The potential for Z is there. Like, it works. They have graphics cards that run above a 2080 Ti. They have for months. Problem is, it uses like 600 watts.
Yeah.
And if you don't think Nvidia could have overclocked a Titan RTX to 400 watts and beaten it, they probably could have. Yeah. So what's going on is their fabric is really good at scaling performance at low latency, but it uses an immense amount of energy. And my understanding is when it comes to the way they're building their Z graphics cards, it's with tiles. It's exactly how Zen builds their CPUs. And one tile is super efficient. So I think we could see low-end Z cards next year that are pretty decent, and you're seeing them in Tiger Lake leaks right now. They're decent. They're good. And we might see a 2-tile solution, but it's like exponential. So like if you have a Z graphics card that uses 60 watts, and let's say it competes with an I don't know what it's going to be called, right? An RT or GT 2040. I don't know. 3040. I don't know what they'll call something at that tier. Like, I think they can be competitive there, but the second they go to 2 tiles and try to compete with like a 3050 Ti, like now it's already up to like 150 watts or 180. Yeah. And then 3 tiles are already at like 350 watts, and that's going to lose to a 3070. So my understanding is they think they can fix it now, but it's not going to be until like Jupiter Sound in 2022 or 2023. Yeah. So I will say that I do think they can have Big Z and surprise everyone late 2 years from now, though. It's over 2 years, and it will be probably pretty great from the sound of it. It's just, I think we should at least hope they get something out that's like $200 and competes with the 3050 Ti, because if they can at least do that, we can at least get a floor in pricing in the mid range too.
Yes, and I think that's an end of 22. That makes sense, right? Like but then also, if it competes with a 30 series card, what's Nvidia going to have by then? What's AMD going to have?
Exactly. Hopper and RDNA 3. Right. And so that's why I say I think Big Z in terms, they could make one now. It's not going to be very good though, guys. In terms of when they can actually compete with what AMD and Nvidia's newest stuff is, it's just right out until 2022 is my answer to that question.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think we'll see so much of the entire PC market shift by then as well. I think there's going to be a lot of change, which is going to be a lot of good as well. A lot of change.
We've gone for a while. I think there's one more thing I want to bring up though. And like, it's starting to leak right now, but like, what do you think about game prices going to $70? I think you're just an interesting person to ask that.
Well, first off, I'm in Australia where all games cost way more money than the States.
Yeah, so but you use Monopoly money. You don't use the real US dollars.
Literally. It's literally like that. No, I think, I don't know, I'm of two minds. I'm okay with that if the experience is worth it. But like, I think that's all changing. Because if I can spend, $10, $15 on a Netflix subscription and I could stream 24 hours a day if I wanted to and watch every single series. They might go, X series costs, $100 million to produce. Well, I don't care. I've paid my money. I can watch any series I want. Games charging $60, $70. I think that those days are going to they have to be over. When I can play, I love Apex Legends. No, it didn't cost me anything. I play Fortnite with my girls. Didn't cost me anything. But if I want to spend money in those games, then that's okay. So like, I think that's a better way. I think that like these AAA titles that go, we need to recoup, the $100 million production budget of this game. It's like, well, okay, if you're spending $100 million in that game and you want me to pay $70 for it, then I shouldn't have to have it look like a trashy console port, right? That's the other problem. So if they want to charge more money for these games and they do look better because of next-gen consoles, then I think a lot of gamers would be okay with that. It's like paying an additional fee from a 1080p Blu-ray to a 4K Blu-ray, right? It's more expensive. Maybe they're going to start to do that, but they have to justify that. It has to look better, But then at the same time, will there be free-to-play next-generation games and look just as good as a $70 title that has a $150 million production budget? I don't know. I'm someone who's, I think that the games are getting expensive because then as well, there's not a lot of people that will be able to buy more than one game every 3 months. So what do you do to those people? There'll be a lot of people that might buy a game every week or might buy a game every month. It's like, it's all different, but then you look at the people that play like Rocket League and CSGO and, there's tens of millions of people that play those games. So every game developer wants to have the game where they're like, we've got 50 million players. But if you look at the numbers, most of the people that play those games, it's not going to happen. They're all free to play games, So it's like there's this big, huge divide. It's like it's either free with tons of microtransactions or it's like going to cost $70. So it's like, what am I going to get for that $70 that beats, that free-to-play game? So if the graphics do look absolutely like amazing, maybe that will be okay in the next few years. Like, but again, I don't want to see these games with issues on day one if I'm paying more money.
Exactly,
I don't want to see all this shit that goes on now where it's like, oh, there's been a 6-month delay. It's like, you knew there was going to be a delay probably months before you delayed it. So again, if there's $10 more per game and there's, a projected, 7 million sales, and you've got an extra $70 million, hire some more people, like make sure that these games come out more polished. They do not have any problems. I expect like next to no issues with these games at launch, like no massive day one patches. We're like, because we're fixing all these bugs. It has to be justified. If it's justified, we can't control it. The only way you can control it is not by games, right? Like, I don't want to pay $70 for that game. Okay.
Then don't.
It's easy.
And I think, and there will be some people that there will be some people that get mad at me and you for even acknowledging that it won't be the worst thing in the world. But I just think I usually honestly argue devil's advocate on this one, because it's like, well, what do you want? Do you want microtransactions? You said no. Okay, well, now the game's $70. They've been charging the same price for 15 years and there's inflation, guys. Like, and you can't pretend there's not inflation, or at least if you do, then you I'm sorry, you don't know how the economy works. There's such a thing as inflation. And I think what we're going to see, though, is it will backfire on some of these companies, right? There will be some companies that are just like, yay, now it's 70 for this yearly installment, and we're going to get a special edition and microtransactions, and no one's going to buy it. People are going to say, but then you're going to have games like GTA 6, and I'm going to be like, yeah, sure, I'd give you 80.
Yes.
And maybe you won't give them 80, but I would if it meant no. That kind of like Red Dead Redemption 2. It's just 100-hour. I mean, just to use an example. I mean, it's not for everyone. Again, you don't have to agree with my gaming taste, people listening. But for me, Red Dead Redemption 2 was at the caliber of like a AAA first-party exclusive game, except it was 100 hours. It was like every 10 hours of open-world exploration felt like a single-player, choreographed, linear game, except it wasn't linear. And so with how excellent that was, I'm happy to pay more for that, but there will be other games where I'm just not touching them. And and frankly, I just wish, instead of trying to find ways to charge $70, just, hey, maybe make it $50 and don't add fetch quests, and I'll be happy with a 20-hour game, because I don't have a lot of spare time. I would so much prefer just a good, tight. It's to the point where I don't think I want the new Assassin's Creed, because I was excited about Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But it was so huge. I'm like, I actually kind of like it less because it's bigger. I don't have time to do this.
That's it. I think you're going to see a lot of game developers just pulling back more of a different curtain. Like, instead of giving this huge, not everyone can have this rock star, level of quality. Like, I haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2, but I've obviously I've read about a ton of it.
You have heard of it, though.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think.
I'm kidding. Yeah, I know.
Could you imagine meeting a gamer now that actually didn't hear about that? But no, I think that you're going to see a lot of developers that are going to maybe do things differently. Like, the graphics are better in all these games, rah. But what about like interactive environments and destructible environments and stuff like that? Like, maybe making smaller worlds, but like much more detailed worlds. It's kind of like what Rockstar do.
Please,
Rockstar, like, that's what I'd love to see as well. Like, I want to see, like, it doesn't just need to be $60 or $70, and it's just another yearly game. But then I also see, I'm sure Ubisoft is sitting back and going, well, how about we charge a subscription service to the Far Cry franchise for $60 a year, right? And we'll charge you $60 a year, flat fee, whatever the hell we make.
You get every new Far Cry, every DLC.
Every DLC, and then we give you all the games in, previous, but then if you stop signing up for it, then those games no longer work. That's going to be the other thing that sucks. But like, I can see them doing something like that, especially like the sports games that come in every year. Like, why do people buy those games every year? And then they're only like changing like one or two things, and then it's a whole new game and you have to pay the whole new amount for it. It's like,
I think most people buy it every other year, though, like every other Madden, I don't know. I don't play sports games, so I have no clue.
Yeah, not the same. I don't play sports games, so never done anything for me. But no, I can see them charging a subscription fee for those games. Maybe that will happen to like the Far Cry.
Well, Microsoft's just trying to do that in general, right? Yes. And I would expect actually that Sony will try that as well, and a lot of people are going to try. The problem, though, is then you turn into like, I already see what it's like. I'm happy to pay for Netflix, and and then HBO, and then I like Hulu a lot, and I've just decided, I'm done. Like, I'm not getting your Disney Plus. I'm not getting your NBC, whatever it's going to be. No, no,
Yep.
this is what I play. And I think people need to realize that if everyone can't keep doing this. So not everyone can have 100-hour games. Not everyone can try to be everything. Like everyone was going to be a battle royale. Like I remember the studio that made, I think it was Super Stardust HD, or they made a lot of arcade games on PlayStation. And they were going to make a battle royale for the PS5 as a story I heard. And then they decided 2 years ago, they canceled it. They saw the writing on the wall and they said, and now if people want to know what they're working on, it's Returnal. And that's that exclusive they showed, which is kind of like a Edge of Tomorrow game. And it's like, yep, I think you charge even just $50 for a tight 12-hour game, you're going to do better. Because we can't all just be battle royales. You're not going to succeed, man. Everyone's, like, for instance, I pick Battlefield. I'm done. That's my online shooter.
Yep. I'm speaking of Battlefield, man. I used to be such a big fan of that, and I'm so scared that they're just going to go too hardcore towards Battle Royale with Battlefield 6. I just want to return to 4-man. I don't think they will.
If they do, I won't get it. I'll just say that. But I mean, well, how much have you played Battlefield 5 though?
I didn't like Battlefield 5 or Battlefield 1. I put hundreds of hours into Battlefield 4, Battlefield 3, Bad Company 2, not Battlefield 1942. I land the hell out of, but then the last two games, I just didn't touch.
No, so I've liked all of them. I skipped Hardline because I was like, why would I get a worse Battlefield 4, guys? But I played, I think my favorite one is 4, although technically I think I played 1 the most, but it's because my friends also got it. So that was the one we would hop on and play. But yes, they added Firestorm to Battlefield 5, and I actually enjoyed it. But I'm not a Battle Royale person, so I was like, it's a fun game mode once in a while. And you can't get a full game in it anymore. So I'm just letting you know, not successful. So I suspect they're not going to do that. In fact, I've heard that they've doubled up on working on Battlefield 6 as a return to form, but that's what I've heard. So,
they need to beat Warzone, man. Like I'm not a big, I love the original Call of Duties, but the Call of Duties of late, I just haven't liked the too arcadey. But Warzone, very different. And you look at the people that are playing, there's tens of millions of people, like 115 player servers, 200 player servers. Like Battlefield now needs Battlefield. I can't even believe I'm about to say this out loud. Battlefield needs to beat Call of Duty with player count. Yeah. So we need to have bigger than 200 now. Like if I was EA and I was DICE, I would be like, okay, Activision has 200 people in a server with Call of Duty Warzone. We are Battlefield. You can't just do 256. It's not even enough now, though, right? Because Warzone's 150, and then they did the 200-player limited time, So, like, now they need 256. Is that enough? Like, if I was Battlefield, I am Battlefield. I need to be like 500 now, right? I need to have this huge
I don't know if we need planet-side numbers.
But they could do it if they, and I've talked with friends heaps about this, and I'm sure you have as well, but like if they split the map into like quadrants of 4 with like 128 players per server, and then like they had like...
Have you played MAG?
No, I haven't, no.
Like you're describing MAG.
Well, then make it MAG, but better.
That was one of my favorite games too, and frankly, that was a game that fell apart because I think they listened to the community too much. I think sometimes you need to know what's best for the community and then make the best game. And they kept tweaking it too much and it alienated people. It's like, oh, now this gun sucks. Now this gun's good. It's kind of happened to Battlefield recently too, actually, come to think of it. So if we're just speaking out loud, my dream would be that Battlefield 6 turns into what MAG was. And let me describe, because I think now you'll understand like why I say you described MAG. Say a 256 player game with 3 factions where there were battles where there were 8-person squads, and the maps would be divided into quadrants with platoons that would attack bases from 4 different sides. And you try to link up in the center to do these like multi-tier objectives. And I'm like, Battlefield, you can do this. Just do it. The thing was MAG had terrible graphics because it was so early, and but it worked, and half of your points came from following your squad leader's objective, and you could vote people. So, man, if you didn't listen to the squad leader, you were out. You were out. Yes. And there were like massive clans and stuff, and it worked so well. Honestly, one of the problems was there were 3 factions, and the faction I was on just decimated everyone. Even when they nerfed their guns, like to the point that their guns were objectively worse across the board, they were still winning most of the time. And that's when the developers threw up their hands and they said, I don't know, all the good players from SOCOM went to the Sever team. It's not our fault.
Wow. Okay. No, I've never got into it, never played it. But there you go. That's
what I want, except like photorealistic modern graphics with that tight gameplay.
The best environmental destruction that has ever been shown off.
Yeah, there was zero bag.
I want that. Like I don't know if you saw the EA Play 2020 event where they showed that building coming down, and it's like that's what we like. Battlefield needs to step up where we have a proper like multiplayer game. They can have a battle royale mode or whatever the hell they want to call it, and then just have like 200 and something players, 256 players would be nice. And I also like the number 256 for obvious reasons. But it would just be cool. It would be cool, like to have that to have photorealistic graphics, because obviously like Frostbite already looks amazing. But then it's going to be the next evolution. I'm sure that they've been holding back on Frostbite for Battlefield 6. I'm sure that they're going to have something huge to reveal, and then environmental destruction. I want the best environmental destruction. That's what.
Well, yeah, and I think it's something they need a balance, but do it, because the problem was in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, they basically came to the conclusion, we don't want to ruin the flow of the map, and so we're not going to have, because there were times me and my clan and Bad Company would, for fun, just eliminate every building on a map in the first 5 minutes, and it would just turn into everyone just spawning and insta-killing each other. So then tone it down. Make it so a grenade launcher doesn't as easily break the entire wall. Maybe make a little hole happen and you can shoot through that hole. But you got to figure it out, because, you can do it, guys. Like and then frankly, they need to. Like if they don't, I don't think anyone's going to buy Battlefield 6.
If Battlefield 6 launches and it does not have environmental destruction that makes me go, okay, holy shit, that's really cool, then I most likely won't touch it. Because if it's just going to be another on rails Call of Duty-esque kind of shooter because they want to compete just with Call of Duty, then no. I want the Battlefield. To me, the heart of Battlefield is those crazy only in Battlefield moments, the full destruction like in the environment, like Bad Company 2. Man, I loved Bad Company 2. The amount of destruction in that was, I expected better and then better, and it kind of like got good, bad at Battlefield 3, kind of like muddled with Battlefield 4, and then just went off the rails. It's like they need to return to that and have kick-ass destruction. Like they could dial it up. They could have water pipes going through the walls and electricity and stuff like that. And if you don't turn the electricity off to a building and you blow up the bathroom, then there's going to be water all over the place, and then you got to go disable the electricity. They could go really deep if they truly wanted to. I'm only talking about
the CPUs are at least 10 times stronger in the consoles, and this SSDs can pull in assets 100 times faster than before, frankly. So, yeah, they could do it. You could literally have environmental destruction, and I'm sure the consoles could handle it, where you're like shooting through walls and pipes are bursting and spraying water while you're going through a building. And that's what it comes down to, right? Call of Duty's never going to do that. Mm-hmm. So you don't beat Call of Duty by baking Call of Duty with Battlefield gimmicks. You make the best product, the best Battlefield you can make, and that's when you'll succeed. Well, I don't want to get into the marketing for Battlefield 5. That was nuts. They even backpedaled it quickly. What was the worst part of it was at launch, Battlefield 5 had it was more hardcore kind of than Battlefield 4. You had no health. And so they kind of marketed it like it was a new free-to-play game, and any noob that joined got destroyed.
Yeah. They did not balance that game, man. But didn't some of the original DICE guys leave? DICE in the last 2 or 3 years? I think it was some of the core Battlefield people left. I think just after Battlefield 1 or just before Battlefield 1. And then Battlefield 5 came out and everyone was like, what the hell? So I'm hoping that they've obviously course corrected.
I think a large part of that, though, is they were kind of turning DICE into their outsourcing group for engine development. They used the Frostbite engine for Andromeda, which just frankly didn't work for that game. It kind of destroyed it. And all of these other things. And DICE, you look at how many people are on that team. I think it's 1,500 or something absurd. And it's just a lot of them left, my understanding, because they were tired of now you got to make the multiplayer for Medal of Honor. Well, we don't want to. We want to make the next Battlefield game. And I don't know how, I think EA's finally figured it out. Anytime you tell DICE to make a game they don't want to make, they're just going to phone it in. They always do. They completely phoned in. Oh my God, Medal of Honor's multiplayer. Come on.
Oh my God. That franchise used to be so good, and they're just completely.
I know. That's the shooter franchise that got me into shooters,
Yeah. Well, Moha, man. Allied Assault that was huge. But I believe EA EA is listening, right? Look at Apex. Look at Apex Legends. They've got Respawn. They had Titanfall. Didn't really work. It wasn't a huge seller. Titanfall 2 wasn't a huge seller. But they came out with Apex.
Good, though.
It's a good game, right? But then Apex came out and it just destroyed. They let Respawn do what they wanted to do, and then they released it for free, and it blew the hell up. So if EA just give that little bit of control to DICE and be like, look, we know you've been wanting to make a Battlefield game, so what does that look like in 2021? You're going to have next-gen consoles. We're going to have this by then. We're going to have that. Maybe that's why they kind of held off a little bit, because they've changed the energy of DICE, changed the energy of the Battlefield franchise, because they know they need to, and especially now with Call of Duty in the last couple of months, it's like, holy shit, Call of Duty has 200 players.
And they did.
They have to change that.
No one expected Warzone to be good. No one did. And it's so successful.
Man. I jumped in because I didn't believe it. I'm like, 200 players, Apex only has 60 players. Really 200 doesn't work. And it's not perfect. There are some issues, but it's 95% perfect. And it works. It works. The respawn system works. The graphics in Call of Duty. I'm walking around going, this looks great. I'm saying the sentence, Call of Duty looks great. What the hell?
Yeah. The recent ones look pretty good, actually.
It does. They've put a lot of work into that. And aren't they still highly modified Quake 3 engine?
I think they are finally using a new one. I think they are.
Finally? Okay. Because it's taken them
I think since Infinite Warfare, they've been using a new one. I think. I don't want to see any comments. Don't correct me.
I'm so sure that they've got bits and pieces of the Quake 3 engine still.
Probably.
But no, I'm just hoping Battlefield change. I want Battlefield to come out and just come out and just amaze everyone. New gamers and Call of Duty gamers and OG Battlefield gamers.
Yeah. Well, I think it people give EA so much shit. In many ways, I feel like they're kind of like McDonald's. They just get the hate, even though everyone does the bullshit. But I think there's rumors that Disney was threatening to even if they lost money, take the Star Wars license away from them. And so, because they basically ran Battlefront into the ground. And I think that's absolutely, if I was Disney, I would have taken it away, by the way, because how can DICE fuck up Battlefront? Battlefront was a Star Wars clone of Battlefield, and you screwed that up. And the microtransactions backfired. And so I at least hope that, I think they've learned their lesson now. It's kind of like you do everything wrong once, eventually you'll know what the right thing to do is.
Yes. And I hope that they've had that course correction. I hope that Battlefield 6 comes out and I just want it to be, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be great. And I think they're moving away from World War II and having modern weapons and modern setting. Battlefield 4 was pretty good with that. Mm-hmm. But now I think that they need to
And I think they waited, though, too. And I always said this, I don't need another Battlefield that's modern until you can really give me something close to photorealism. Because I was like, I'll just go play Battlefield 4 again. Frankly, it's kind of a perfect game. Of course, besides the aggressively mediocre campaign. And so I like, that's why I like the World War I and the World War II, because frankly, I don't need it again. But I think we're there now. I think we're there with the next gen consoles. Well, and again, if it's not a knockout, like a Battlefield 3 moment where they try to return to the apex of what they can do well, I think, I don't know what's going to happen to the Battlefield series.
I can see that franchise being shelved for a little while. It's almost like an all or nothing moment. Battlefield 6 needs to just work, or they just need to shelve it and admit, that they couldn't do it, maybe leave it for a few years or give it to someone else. I don't know. Let someone else play around with it, because obviously DICE have lost their magic with it. They've had a couple of games. The last two Battlefield games just have not been successful. They haven't
the first one, Battlefield 1 is actually the best selling Battlefield in history, I believe.
Really?
That's the one that outsold Call of Duty.
Wow.
So that one is divisive, though, because it's so different than 3 and 4. But it sold well. Yeah, it sold really well.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, looking now. Okay. But no, I don't know. I'm just hoping that DICE, I hope that DICE return to form. I'd love to see photorealistic graphics or as close to it. And Call of Duty, man. I don't know have you played Warzone?
I have not, no.
Okay, that is, again, even with 200 players, those graphics look there's some of the parts that are very photorealistic, some of those buildings and signs and stuff like that, it looks gorgeous. With Battlefield, Battlefield has to look, oh my God, it has to be a good step up on that. So then you're talking close to photorealistic and then crazy.
Again, the idea that you said of like pipes shooting out water through buildings, that made my hair stand up a little bit thinking about that, because like that close quarters DLC in Battlefield 3, and they came pretty close to that too. And it's like, wait, that was like a decade ago when that game came out. I wonder how good it would look now.
Well, how good would it look like again with ray tracing and stuff? Like you saw what Nvidia did with that, like with Battlefield 5. It's like, imagine coming into like I don't know, like in my house. Imagine like, we're having a firefight in this house in like a residential area, and I come through the back door and I'm like shooting up the kitchen, and there's just like, dust and, bricks and like tiles and stuff going over. There's
the
water all over
graphics
the
card
place.
actually shoots out a spark when you hit it.
Pretty much, yeah.
And you see like fan blades fall off the PC.
You'll be pushing everything inside of your PC to render something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think they can. Offload the physics destruction to the cloud or something. We could see something completely different. We don't know. It could be something magic.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm starting to fall asleep a little bit. It's been a very long day, but I think that was unexpected, but pretty fun. Just Battlefield fanning out at the end of the episode. It was clear we could probably just talk about Battlefield for about an hour. I'm getting the feeling, so we've got to cut it off at a certain point.
Yes.
Well, let me ask anything else, though. Is there anything else you want to discuss? Any questions you have? I've certainly seen you cover my videos before, so that's
I've covered a fair amount of those. No, you do a good job. With all that, that's why I was happy to come on the show. I am going to pretty much, it's 1:30 in the afternoon here, so I'm going to go up and write up a bunch of all the new leaks again from your video. There's a lot of juicy stuff in there. So again, I have to write that. What we were talking about before, like all these leaks, is going to be like, I could write one big story. This is the latest you need to read on RDNA 2, but it's going to be, 3 or 4 news posts of
Moore's Law's Dead's latest story that trolls will attack him for because one detail will be wrong.
That's it. You put a letter wrong, or there's no space somewhere, or not a capitalization.
It runs.
I don't see any capitalized tentacles, so maybe someone will. There was no capital T, man. Have a capital T.
I think was that from my source though. That was his fault, not mine.
There you go. I'll make sure I'll write that in my article.
You idiot! It's called a 6950 XT, not a 6900 XT. Fake information.
Yeah. Oh, cringe.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. I think this was frankly, one of the best episodes. I mean, so anyone listening, go to TweakTown. I mean, plug yourself.
Yeah. Well, comes TweakTown, obviously TweakTown.com. We're everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, and all that kind of stuff. But the website's probably the best part. It's not just graphics card, news either. It's just general tech news, the world as we see it as well, not just computer parts. It's cool. I love what I do. Thank you for everything you do as well. All the leaks and stuff, they're important. We need that. I need that as much as
I don't know if they're important, but they're certainly fun to talk about.
That's all it is. It's you know what? In a world where everyone's stuck inside right now, it's kind of cool that we have jobs where we can actually or at least a passion that we can talk about.
Yeah, we are the lucky ones. We are. And you can go to TweakTown. Remember to subscribe to Moore's Law's Dead, Broken Silicon, whatever else channels I've made. I've got like 5 or something, and share all of our stuff. And thanks for listening, everybody. The following podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law's Dead. Moore's Law's Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law's Dead podcast, videos, articles, and other media. However, Moore's Law's Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother, Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, and select technical editing by Carbon Cry. You can find all of our information, including how to get a hold of us, at www.mooreslawsdead.com. And if you are a fan and would like to send mail or other hardware, please mail parcels to Moore's Law's Dead, P.O. Box 10468, Peoria, Illinois, 61612. And speaking of fans, without exaggeration, the patrons are solely responsible for the continued distribution of the content you just listened to. And so if you have some extra money, but only if you do, please consider supporting us. For just $2 a month, you get access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to have your questions read aloud on Broken Silicon, Die Shrink, and Loose Ends, and of course, the Moore's Law's Dead Discord full of like-minded people who would love to meet you. I am one of them.
The Discord is only at $1, and at higher tiers, you get access to ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the back catalog of Flyover States podcast, thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts, and other perks as well. And if you cannot afford to support us, please just share Moore's Law's Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family on social media and Reddit. And give Broken Silicon and Flyover States a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. All of this really does help so much more than I think anyone realizes. If you'd like to advertise on the podcast or a person of interest who would like to be a guest, please reach out to the email address mlhbdead@gmail.com. But as I said, this podcast would not be possible without its fans supporting it. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher producer levels. Bootman, Carbon Cry, Dean, Benny Berlin, Justin Yant, Thomas Rupp, I Love You, Lynn and Jim, Bollocks, Joshua Albin, Muhammad Al-Kawari, Frederick Lau, James Crassa, Justin Parrish, Zachary Martin, Terrence Herod, Brad Medlin, Phil S., Thyrister, The Ninth Dude, Greg Renegar, TSP CFS, Chrysantine, Night Rogue 77, The Mechanical Philosopher, Lebo King Kilo, Fatboy Diesel, Daniel Hyde, Matthew McMullen, Christoph Novak, Jack O'Neill, Matt Salem, Aaron Close, Sexy, VI Pass, Sadler, Richter Kohagon, Elethros, Talos, Hey There's a Kitty, Greg T. Wanchek, Jacob Barber, Exoti, Hector Santana, Matthew Lane, Paul Jones, Jan Rauner, Rubber Ducks, Trita Full, Ali Robertson, Eric Jackson, Jonathan, Job, Evan Dingle, Dominic Duerk, Dominic Cock, Original Ross, Wayne, Sam MacArthur, Total Silo, Sol Connor, Michael Costa, Andrew S., Blake, Aaron Keith, Carrie Baldino, Endless Logan, Sam Sanfilippo, Justin Brennan, Ivan K., Trevor Powers, Garrick Scholl, Elenia, Joshua Staveness, Daniel Nishbal, Franco Frederick, Hardware Numbers, Alex Carastillo, Dark Rain 2049, Leighton Perry, Neil X01, Carlos Valdez, and Carnivore Bear, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.